Chapter 2799. His half-closed eyelashes covered most of the malevolence in his dark eyes, but it brought out a deeper hostility. You're spending the royal family's share of the military budget. Have you seen what the royal family has been doing all these years? Mother Lu was so angry that her whole body trembled. You're simply rebelling. This world belongs to the royal family. What's wrong with eating a little military budget? Lu Xinglan's beautiful and pale face revealed a trace of terrifying anger. What's wrong with eating a little military budget? That's eating lives, drinking blood, and bones. Have you seen the situation of the frontier soldiers? Have you seen a soldier who still risked his life to kill the enemy on the battlefield before starving to death? This country does not belong to the royal family, nor does it only belong to the royal family. This is the sky that countless soldiers of the Lu family carry with their lives. Lu Xinglan's eyes were red. Towards the end, her throat was trembling. Is your face used to hurt me, mother? His chest and abdomen were hurting. It wasn't that he hadn't seen his mother's style all these years. He had been stopping her. He had been trying to change her back. But step by step, her selfishness was incisive and vivid. He thought that it would be fine as long as he ignored it. But ignoring it brought about an even bigger mistake. Mother Lu was so frightened by his fierce gaze that her body trembled. Her mouth trembled, and she suddenly pointed at Wei Bai and said, "You're just criticizing me for an insignificant servant. In your eyes, I'm not even comparable to a servant?" After saying that, she sneered, "What a bitch, seducing the master. She deserves to be beaten to death. The medicine just now shouldn't have been a contraceptive medicine, but a life-threatening poison." These words were too vicious. Wei Bai's fingers clutched Lu Xinglan's collar tightly. The blood on her fingertips soaked Lu Xinglan's clean collar. She was terrified, but suddenly she raised her eyes slightly. A pair of eyes blurred by tears were filled with panic and guilt. "Young master, it's all my fault. Don't quarrel with your mother." Lu Xinglan's heart twisted. His thin lips also lost a trace of color, but he still smiled at her. In the next moment, he bent down, lowered his head, and sucked on her blood-stained lips. This kiss was light, but full of the taste of blood. More than that, they trembled with pity. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 40. He had always been steady. Don't do such impulsive and irrational things. There were too many things in this world that forced him to remain calm. But when he met such a pair of pure eyes that only had his shadow in them, he felt only the anger of being thrown into the fire. Mrs. Lu was furious and threw a teacup at him. "Are you crazy, Lu Xinglan? What are you doing in broad daylight?" Lu Xinglan didn't move, allowing the fragments of the teacup to fly everywhere. One of the fragments cut his cheek, causing some blood to flow out. The person in his arms was not injured at all. He left the stunned girl and finally smiled. But his eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. "You want me to have descendants all your life, and you even want to descend into the royal family. If you like children so much, why don't you have one yourself?" When he said this, his smile turned cold. "Do you want me to help you find a few men to borrow your seed? Some of the children of the royal family should prefer the older ones. Why don't they give birth to their own children?" Mrs. Lu was so angry that she almost fainted on the spot. "Lu Xinglan, what are you talking about? I'm going to complain to the heavens and sue you for being unfilial." In the southern country, filial piety was respected. Who was unfilial? That was the biggest taboo. If an official was accused of being unfilial, they would lose their black veil. It was common for them to be directly sent to prison to eat. Chapter 2800. Lu Xinglan's eyes were downcast, and the trace of blood on his pure white face brought out the hostility in his entire body. He walked forward step by step. The servant girl was so frightened by his frightening aura that her legs went weak. Madame Lu sat up with difficulty. "What are you doing? Unfilial son, are you going to kill me?" Lu Xinglan reached out and pressed the back of the person in his arms, making her closer to him. He felt her rapid heartbeat and trembling in fear. This was the first time he wanted a girl to not be afraid. Therefore, his voice was suppressed and unusually calm, but it was cold and austere. It was like the remaining snow in a frozen sky, cold and fierce. I don't dare to kill you. I just want to tell you that our Lu family will be extinct and there will be no more descendants. From my generation onwards, the Lu family will have no descendants. The plaque on the Lu family will also be taken to the grave after I die. He said until here. His smile was cold. After I die, there will be no one to worship, no one to worship, no one to burn paper offerings, and no one to remember. And this was the end of the entire Lu family. Lu Xinglan paused. He looked at Madame Lu's pale face and revealed a calm and gentle smile. Is this what you want? Madame Chun. Before Madame Lu joined the Lu family, her maiden name was Chun. After Lu Xinglan finished speaking, he took a few steps back and shouted coldly, "What are you waiting for? Beat these traitors to death." Xin Wu appeared at the door. More than a dozen burly servants followed behind him. They rushed into Madame Lu's room. Those female servants, as well as the servants who had been drugged, were all caught and dragged out. Lu Xinglan hugged the girl with his back to the light. His face in the shadow was handsome like a god, but cold like a demon. No need to drag them out. Beat them to death on the spot. Madame Lu's fingers trembled, not from anger, but from fear. She stared into her son's eyes. Those eyes were like those of a demon, full of murderous intent. Soon, screams and the sound of sticks rang out, and the smell of blood filled the entire room. The blood on the floor began to flow. It covered the blood that Wei Wei Bai spat out. Lu Xinglan looked at Madame Lu calmly. It was as if he was looking at a piece of dead meat. He thought that Yuanda was the most disgusting piece of meat. He didn't expect that his mother was the same. Even more so than Yuanda. About a quarter of an hour passed. The screams slowly faded away. The supervising Xin Wu stood calmly in the pool of blood. He clasped his hands behind his back and straightened his back. He said expressionlessly, "The 18 people involved in this matter have all stopped breathing." Lu Xinglan's fingers gently stroked Wei Wei Bai's back. It was an exceptionally gentle gesture of comfort. He raised his head. There was no expression on his delicate face, and the darkness in his eyes was still there. However, her tone was soft and gentle. "In the future, this place will be your retirement home. You're old and your body isn't in good condition. Your brain is also affected by your body, and you have all kinds of hallucinations. To prevent something from happening to you, I had no choice but to seal the door of your courtyard." At this point, a gentle smile appeared on Lu Xinglan's face. His tone was so calm that it made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "Do you think this is a good arrangement?" The Chun clan. Mother Lu's mouth moved, but she couldn't utter a single word. Her hands gripped the armrest of the chair tightly. Facing a room full of dead people, the blood flowed to her feet. Her feet trembled as she tried to move away, but she found that she didn't have any strength left. Lu Xinglan glanced at her indifferently. There was no love or hate. There was only indifference as cold as snow. Then, he turned around with the girl in his arms and walked out of the blood-stained ground without a care. His fingers kept stroking the back of the person in his arms, as if he was worried that she would be frightened. Chapter 2801. Lu Xinglan had just walked out when Mother Lu released her fingers. She was paralyzed on the chair, as if she was dead. Her feet were soaked in blood, and she was so scared that her whole body trembled. She wanted to call her unfilial son, but the words were choked in her throat, and she almost died. Xin Wu walked over with a paralyzed face. "Do you need a doctor?" Mother Lu pointed at him with a trembling finger. Her face was red, and she was about to speak. Xin Wu had already turned around. "It seems that your body is still strong. There's no need for a doctor." With that, he disappeared. He left a room full of corpses in the same room with Mother Lu. Mother Lu was stunned for a long time. The room was empty. The incense was still floating, but it couldn't hide the strong smell of blood. Finally, Mother Lu's scream came from the room. "Lu Xinglan, you unfilial son." Lu Xinglan walked out of the courtyard and still heard this sentence. He stopped in his tracks, but his expression didn't change at all. The girl in his arms was especially cold. It was the result of that drug destroying her body's qi and blood. She wouldn't have children in the future. Moreover, Her hands and feet were cold all year round, and she would be especially weak due to chi deficiency. A drug that could directly cause a girl to lose her virginity must be a tyrannical drug. It didn't do the body any good. If she didn't take good care of herself, she would definitely be a medicine jar for the rest of her life. Lu Xinglan couldn't help but quicken his steps and finally arrived at his courtyard. He walked into the room and carefully put her on the bed. Wei Wei Bai was still a little sluggish. She didn't vomit blood again, but the blood at the corner of her lips was still there. A trace of heartache flashed in Lu Xinglan's eyes. He pursed his pale lips, and there was a trace of haggardness on his pale face. Then he immediately turned around and went out to get hot water. He took a clean towel, warmed it, and carefully wiped her face. The girl's face was pink and white, and there was no color in it. Her clear eyes turned slightly, as if she had finally returned to her senses. "Young master." Her voice was a little hoarse. "I'm fine." This sentence was light and indifferent. There was no resentment. Lu Xinglan didn't know why, but his nose felt sour. He immediately lowered his head to wash the handkerchief again. "With me here, nothing will happen." He did not dare to tell her what those drugs were for. To a woman, the end of her family line was the most terrifying and vicious curse. How could he bear to tell her this? She was still young. The most vicious thing had happened to her. Lu Xinglan's chest was filled with pain, but he couldn't explain what kind of feeling this was. There was guilt and pity. More than that, he felt a surge of helplessness in his heart when he saw that she was still forcing herself to remain calm after being injured. The girl's figure was still as soft as ever. "Young master, I won't have children in the future, right?" Lu Xinglan's fingers stiffened. Then, as if nothing had happened, she wrung the handkerchief dry. The warm handkerchief held her fingers. The blood on her fingers was stained with blood. It was like the color of impatience oil on her nails. When Wei Wei Bai saw this, she smiled. "Young master, this is the rouge flower juice that I made myself today. It can be used to apply nail polish. The color is very nice." It was the same color as the blood stains. However, she did not mention how much blood was on it. Let's just talk about her rouge flower juice. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes trembled. His voice was hoarse. "It looks nice." He held her fingers. They were cold, but he couldn't warm them up no matter how hard he tried. He used a bit of true chi and channeled it in her fingertips bit by bit, warming her up bit by bit. "In the future," he said in a low voice, "your body will recover. I'll find a doctor for you." The man lowered his head and knelt on one knee by the bed. He was almost leaning against the girl. He did not raise his head. His dark eyes were half covered by his eyelids, hiding most of the broken light, leaving only an obscure darkness. Wei Wei Bai stared at his lowered face. A sweet smile appeared on her fair face. "Yes, I'll be healthy after seeing a doctor. Moreover, I'm still young. I'll live for a long, long time." A bitter smile appeared on Lu Xinglan's lips. Suddenly, the girl stretched out her other cold hand and gently placed it on his shoulder. She leaned over, and her cold breath brushed past his ear. "I'm younger than you, so I'll live longer than you. So when you die, I'll worship you, and burn paper for you." Her voice was soft and cold. It was as light as smoke, but it was so heavy that Lu Xinglan suddenly raised his head and couldn't breathe properly. The girl in front of him smiled gently. Her eyes were sparkling, and her snow-white face was breathtakingly beautiful. "I'll remember you, Lu Xinglan." Lu Xinglan stared at her for a long time. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 50. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. / transmigration system. Male god, come here. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Button at the bottom to record your reading record. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Chapter 28:02. The girl's gaze was like a flower in warm light. Lu Xinglan was speechless for a moment. His cold and dark eyes were filled with surging tides. Sourness spread to the corners of his eyes. He blinked with effort and pursed his thin lips tightly. In the end, he couldn't hold back the surging sourness in his heart and lowered his voice slightly. "I'm such an unfilial person. I don't deserve to be worshipped in the future." He ended the Liu family's bloodline. It was natural for him to become a lonely soul after death. Wei Wei Bai's lips were wiped clean. Because of the loss of qi and blood, there was an unhealthy pink. Her charming eyes curved sweetly, and she stretched out her fingers to touch the fragile man in front of her tenderly. Her fingertips were cold, but the temperature of her voice was unusually comforting. You are worthy of the heavens, worthy of the earth, worthy of this country, and worthy of the people. I believe that the ancestors of the Liu family spent their lives to protect all of this and handed it to you. And you kept it. This is the greatest filial piety. Speaking of this, the girl's smile revealed a hint of bitterness. When I heard of your deeds in the past, I admired you very much. I felt that you were a great hero who protected the southern nation and also protected us little people. There was a hint of sorrowful pity in her eyes. Later, when I washed clothes in the snow for the first time in winter, my hands hurt from the cold. I thought of you at the border. Was it colder and hungrier? I just washed clothes, but you braved the snow and carried your life on your shoulders to fight in the war. This trace of pity revealed a hint of sadness in her words. How can a person like you not be worshipped after death? There are more than 10 million people like me who love you. She revealed a smile. You are worthy of others, but they are not worthy of you. Liu Xinglan didn't move, his eyes focused on her. He was extremely obedient and was gently stroked like this. He had never understood the tenderness of a girl. He had never experienced gentle treatment. He thought that he was used to rolling in the cold snow and wind without anyone to comfort him. He didn't feel that it was hard, but it turned out that it wasn't hard. It was just that he didn't care. He remembered something. An old soldier was sitting next to him. He was drinking and reading the new letter his wife had written for him to the illiterate veteran. The last paragraph. He didn't know how he remembered. When you're outside, pay more attention to your food. The night at the border is cold, and I'm looking at the moon. When I sat by the window and mended your clothes, I looked at the moon and thought that you were also looking at it, and my heart was comforted. He didn't quite understand when the old soldier heard this sentence. Why are you crying like an old dog? It turned out that it felt so good to have someone thinking about you. She was so good that when he looked at her, tears welled up in his eyes. Every word was filled with tenderness. Compared to Lung Shui's knife, it was sharper, but it made people gladly hold her hand. He wanted her to take pity on him, but her words pierced right through his heart. Wei Wei Bai suddenly retracted her hand and turned her face away to wipe her eyes. How am I being sentimental? I just feel that a hero like young Master shouldn't be so dejected. You're a great general. Suddenly, she stopped talking. The man gently pressed his face against her thigh. The frosty white couldn't compare to the fragile whiteness on the man's delicate side face. His eyes were half closed, and his hand were wrapped around her waist like a child seeking solace. The girl was silent for a long time. Then she gently reached out and touched his hair. Her fingertips stroked his messy hair and smoothed it out one by one. No one spoke. This rare silence was like a wounded lone wolf that found a safe place and finally dared to put down its vigilant eyes and slowly rest. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 55. T. Chapter 2803. Mother Liu was under house arrest, and the courtyard was sealed. The people from the royal family seemed to be on guard. They didn't send offerings over. Liu Xinglan didn't react when he heard the news. It was as if the two sides had stopped fighting and quieted down. As for Mother Liu, it was said that the maid who served her was beaten and scolded by her. Liu Xinglan only raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "Since she doesn't like to be served, let her do it herself." Mother Liu had too many problems. Her selfishness was in her bones. Liu Xinglan hated her, but she was his biological mother, so he couldn't kill her. But he didn't have so much patience in other places. Liu Xinglan finished practicing his bow and looked at all the arrows that hit the bullseye with a calm expression. He was dressed in white, his sleeves were narrow and neat, and a corner of his robe was tied at his waist. He looked extraordinarily handsome and elegant. He threw the bow and arrows to Xian Wu. Beside him, a pair of soft hands held a cup of tea and placed it in front of him. Liu Xinglan took it. He looked up and saw Wei Wei by wearing a green dress, standing slim like a lotus leaf in summer. Her hair was also tied into two cute buns, with pink ribbons and small pearls hanging from them, like pink flower buds on a lotus leaf. When she saw him looking over, she gently touched her cherry-like red lips with a handkerchief and said with a smile, "Young master, drink some tea. Don't be too tired." Lu Xinglan looked at her charming and enchanting eyes, full of pure charm, and smiled. He suddenly felt that the sun was a little hot. He quickly picked up the tea and took a sip. He didn't know what the tea tasted like, but it was definitely delicious. After drinking the tea, Lu Xinglan went to take a bath. When he came back, he saw that Wei Wei was already sitting in the room. She was sitting by the window, and the window was propped up, revealing the white light. The girl had her head lowered and was carefully grinding the petals. When she saw him, she immediately smiled. "I had nothing to do, so I made some rouge." After all, there weren't many rouges in this era that were easy to use. There were even heavy metals that exceeded the standard. Wei Wei Bai, who was afraid that her face would rot, used a terrifying amount of perseverance to become an expert in natural plant skincare products in a short period of time. There was nothing that could stop her from running wildly on the path of pursuing beauty. Lu Xinglan saw that her soft and tender fingertips were stained with the juice of flower petals. The bright colors were exceptionally beautiful. Lu Xinglan watched in silence for a while before she struggled to shift her gaze elsewhere. Then he said, "You make everything look good." Wei Wei Bai smiled even more brightly. "I'm glad you like it." Lu Xinglan was puzzled for a moment. She applied it herself. What did it have to do with whether he liked her or not? He suddenly realized what she meant. Lu Xinglan pursed her lips and walked to the table as if nothing had happened. Then, she picked up a pen and began to draw a map. One stroke at a time. But the painting was completely out of shape. If they were to use this map to attack the enemy, they would probably fall into the enemy's trap. Lu Xinglan lowered her eyes. Her expression was obscure and dark. He pulled out another piece of white paper, but just as he was about to write, he suddenly paused. The girl by the window didn't seem to notice his peeking gaze. She leaned against the chair. Her wide green sleeves revealed her beautiful white lotus-like wrist. On her wrist was a jade bracelet. The emerald green jade bracelet made her fair skin look even whiter and more delicious. When Lu Xinglan came back to his senses, the tip of his pen had already outlined the girl's beautiful figure. Chapter 2804. With just a few strokes, the image of her leaning against the window was deeply engraved. Lu Xinglan stopped writing, and his face suddenly turned red. He quickly tried to take the paper away. However, he heard the girl's sweet voice. "Young master, it's done. Do you think the color looks good?" Lu Xinglan's fingers stopped, and he looked up. He saw the girl stretch out her fair fingers. Her fingertips were covered with delicate pollen. The red color had a glossy halo. Due to the lack of qi and blood, the color on her lips had thinned quite a bit. She smeared the lipstick on her lips. That bright red color was so beautiful that it dazzled the eyes of others. Wei Wei Bai's fingers hung down casually. The red color fell between her nails. It was like a flower bloomed on her fingertips. However, the most beautiful flower was the one on her lips. "Does it look good?" She seemed to see his daze and couldn't help but laugh softly. She innocently reached out to cover her seductive red lips. Lu Xinglan's face was a little red. He seemed a little embarrassed. He lowered his eyes and didn't look at her. He seemed to see that she was teasing him. Wei Wei Bai seemed to find it funny too. He had never seen a woman wearing rouge, so he didn't hold back. So she corrected her attitude and lowered her head seriously to continue making the rouge. Lu Xinglan looked at the drawing on the paper. His dark eyes had a trace of embarrassment and panic. For girls, although he appeared calm, he felt that he was facing a huge problem. Her every move, he didn't know how to deal with it. Even when he woke up in the middle of the night and stared at her sleeping face, that burning surge made him feel extremely uncomfortable. But he didn't dare to touch her. The more he had feelings for her, the more he was afraid of hurting her. Lu Xinglan wouldn't be at a loss like he was facing Wei Wei, even if he was facing a powerful enemy. Outside the window, Xian Wu shouted, "It's time for dinner." Wei Wei was already hungry. She immediately jumped up from the chair. Have you eaten? Young master, I'll help Xian Wu serve the dishes. With that, she happily ran past him. Two pink ribbons gracefully swept past his arms. The touch of brushing clothes, almost no. However, it made Lu Xinglan stiffen. After she ran out, silence returned to the room. Lu Xinglan stood there for a while, then began to pack up the paper as if nothing had happened. Just as she was about to put the painting back into the box, she heard a voice coming from behind her. Suddenly, his eyes fell on the lipstick scattered around the window and on the small table. He was silent for a while. Then he took out a clean brush and dipped it in some red. Then he placed it on the painting. The girl's originally colorless lips had a trace of bright red staining them. It was tempting and delicious. It was like the beauty of a cherry. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 65. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes in a daze. Then he heard the sound of cheerful footsteps coming from outside. Only then did he immediately put down his brush and put away the painting. Then he spread out a new piece of paper and scribbled on it. It looked like a map, but it was actually a bunch of nonsense scribbles. Wei Wei Bai and Xian Wu set the table. Time to eat, the girl called out in a sweet voice. Lu Xinglan lowered his head, his back facing them. He calmly said, After I finish these few strokes and finish this map, I'll eat. He said it as if he had really drawn a map. After eating, Wei Wei Bai sat under the light and did needlework. Her needlework was abnormally rough. A pair of mandarin ducks were embroidered with the temperament of two dumb ducks. Lu Xinglan was still indifferently commenting on it. It looks pretty good. //. Chapter 28:05. When she said she wanted to make a sachet for him, he immediately saw anything she embroidered. In his eyes, everything was perfect. Xian Wu poked his head in to take a look, then curled his lips. It's so ugly. It's worse than old Yin Yang who sold pancakes at the border. Wei Wei Bai said, Old Yin Yang. Xian Wu said, her fingers are disabled, so she embroidered it with her toes. Wei Wei Bai was speechless. Lu Xinglan slowly pulled out his sword, then walked out and said to Xian Wu, My hands are itching. There must be mosquitoes. Come and kill them with me. After that, the sword light went straight for Xian Wu's head. Xian Wu was confused. Are there mosquitoes on my head? Then he realized that Lu Xinglan was angry again. He said his woman was beautiful. He was angry. He deliberately insulted his woman, and he was angry again. And the embroidery was really ugly. That was the truth. It was not only women who were pretentious, but also men. She was so pretentious and unreasonable. After killing the mosquitoes, Lu Xinglan came back slowly. He saw that Wei Wei Bai was seriously embroidering the sachet, and he was relieved. It was good that she did not think that her embroidery was ugly. Wei Wei Bai asked the system, Is my embroidery nice? The system said, You want to hear the truth or the lie? Wei Wei Bai said, Only children make choices. I choose to listen. The system said the lie is ugly. Wei Wei Bai was calm and proud. My embroidery skills can only be understood by the immortals. The system said, The truth is too ugly. What kind of motherfucking thing are you embroidering? Wei Wei Bai was silent for a while, then said, No wonder, you're just an ordinary system. After hurting each other, Su Tong felt refreshed and continued with her ordinary life. Lu Xinglan was sitting beside her, holding a book, pretending to read. He was actually looking at her. Such a warm and quiet life. It was something Lu Xinglan had never experienced before, but after experiencing it, he felt that it would be great if it could continue like this. He saw the girl's eyelashes fluttering, her beautiful eyes looking around. She stole a glance at him. However, she met his gaze. The two of them were stunned for a moment before they lowered their heads and blushed at the same time. Lu Xinglan's breathing quickened, and her fingers couldn't help but twitch. Then, she gently reached out her hand. At the speed of a snail, he wanted to touch her hairband. It was purely because he thought that her hairband was pretty. He didn't want to touch her on purpose. Lu Xinglan thought expressionlessly, but she didn't wait for her fingers to touch him. Xian Wu's voice sounded eerily. Young master, you have news to deal with. Lu Xinglan's fingers stiffened. and then she retracted them as if nothing had happened. She raised her extremely cold eyes and looked at Xian Wu outside the door. Xian Wu's head was swollen, and his expression was cold and emotionless. He couldn't tell if it was intentional. Lu Xinglan originally wanted to refuse this kind of official business. However, he heard Wei Wei Bai say gently, "Young master, you have matters to attend to. Go ahead." Lu Xinglan couldn't bring herself to reject him. He was a hero in her eyes. Heroes can't treat their work as nothing, right? So Lu Xinglan smiled and said, "Okay, I'll be right back." Then she got up and walked out. Her face was as dark as charcoal. Xian Wu whispered the news. Lu Xinglan was indifferent. It was a spy hidden by the imperial family who needed to pass on the palace's news at Lotus Lake. Lu Xinglan had to go there himself. This kind of message passing was dangerous, but it wasn't, because the location of the message was always different. Generally speaking, the person who passed on the message was very professional. If there wasn't someone more professional tailing them, there wouldn't be a big problem. Lu Xinglan pondered for a moment, then suddenly turned and walked into the house. It was still early. The scenery at Lotus Lake was beautiful. She must be bored in the residence. Lu Xinglan thought of many reasons to take her out to play. However, when his calm eyes met the girl's puzzled eyes, all his words were stuck. The two of them looked at each other for a while. Lu Xinglan suddenly turned and walked out. Just as she was about to leave, he suddenly stopped at the door with his hands behind his back. The man's tone was calm. He stepped on the moonlight and said, "Although the night scenery at Lotus Lake is ordinary, it's fun to play and pick lotus seeds occasionally. I'm going to admire the lotuses tonight. You can wait by my side." Wei Wei Bai's reaction was a little slow. She was stunned for a moment before she put down the needle. "Yes, young master." Lu Xinglan nodded with his back to her. Then, when he stepped over the threshold, he almost tripped. His steps were nimble. He was about to fall, but he immediately steadied himself. Then, Lu Xinglan's eyes were cold and calm. "The moon is too dark. I can't see clearly." Wei Wei Bai and Xian Wu looked at him, speechless. There was no need to explain. It was even more awkward after the explanation. The S/ the full articles that downloads the S. Chapter 28:06. There was a lotus field in the depths of Lotus Lake. Boats came and went. Lu Xinglan sat at the side of the boat, wearing a bamboo hat. He held a fishing hook in his hand and was fishing at night. Xian Wu had a mustache. His face was painted black and wrinkled. He looked like an old man in charge of rowing the boat. The lotus field in Lotus Lake was too dense. As the boat moved forward, the lotus leaves that were too tall opened up on both sides of the boat. Wei Wei Bai didn't dress up. She and Lu Xinglan sat at the stern of the boat, humming as they picked a bunch of lotus leaves and lotus flowers. Lotus leaves could cook underwater fire. Lotus flowers could be made into lotus cakes. She wanted to see if she could use flowers to make some skincare products. Recently, she had the urge to make skincare products for any flower that wasn't poisonous. Lu Xinglan's eyes were calm, as if he was staring at the fish hook. In fact, he couldn't catch a single fish. If his heart wasn't calm, the fish wouldn't come. He listened to the sweet song in his ears. It came from the girl's throat, from the tip of her tongue, and from her lips that were painted with flower rouge. Half of Lu Xinglan's face, which was hidden under the bamboo hat, seemed to be facing the fish. In fact, he had been looking at his side from the corner of his eye. The girl was happy and content. She calmly arranged the large number of lotus leaves and lotus flowers. The lake was very lively. The light of lanterns was everywhere. The shore of Lotus Lake was full of people who came to avoid the summer heat. There were hawkers everywhere. There were also boats on the lake to buy fresh water chestnuts. Wei Wei Bai reached out and casually touched the apricot hairpin in her hair bun. She was at the tender age of a young girl. She was budding. She was gorgeous yet pure. It was the most attractive age. A boat was approaching from the edge of their lotus field. It was much bigger and more gorgeous than their boat. Lu Xinglan looked up indifferently. She knew what kind of boat it was with a glance. It was a boat for high-ranking officials and nobles to have fun. They were afraid of being caught by their parents on the shore, so they directly brought it into the lake. There were brothels on the boat. It was all about eating, drinking and playing. Those vermin who indulged in a life of luxury. Of course, Lu Xinglan was too lazy to care about these things. However, when the ship passed by them, a few lotus flowers fell into the lake. It was right beside them. There were some ripples in the lake, and the lotus flowers were about to float away. Lu Xinglan calmly used her fishing rod and caught the lotus in her mouth. He dragged the lotus over. Wei Wei Bai looked at her curiously. Small pearls dangled from her beautiful hairband. They fell on her neck, accentuating the fair skin of her slender neck. It was even prettier than the luster of the pearls. She asked softly, "Young master, what is this?" Lu Xinglan didn't try to hide anything. After fishing up the flowers, she placed them in her hands. "There's a small wooden tube inside. You can pick it up." Wei Wei Bai reached out with her fingertips and clasped the inside of the petals. Sure enough, he found the wooden pipe inside. Then, Wei Wei Bai passed the wooden tube to Lu Xinglan. All this was hidden in the gloomy lotus field. Only the big ship was brightly lit, illuminating one side of their ship's bow. The playboys on the ship were unrestrained. One of them was a young man with his clothes open, drinking wine wildly. He was malicious and pale. The people around him were exceptionally careful with him. The singers and dancers came over to serve him enthusiastically. When they chartered the ship, these officials and nobles who were usually abnormally powerful gave orders. They had to serve this young man who was the last to board the ship, but no one had seen him before. However, when they saw those officials' sons who were usually extremely arrogant, at this moment, they were serving the young man like little quails. Everyone knew to be careful. Full text //. Download / to facilitate your next reading. You can click on the comma. Chapter 28:07. The young man drank wine with a sinister expression. When he saw a woman come over to touch him, he didn't refuse. A songstress was bold. Her slender fingers reached into his open clothes, intending to give him an incomparably ecstatic night. The young man's eyes were lazy, but the emotions in his eyes were cold. The lights of the big boat swayed. He casually looked at the lotus field. He saw a simple yellow paper lantern at the bow of the boat. Under the lantern, the lotus flowers bloomed. A young girl, standing at the bow of the boat, reached out to adjust the position of the lantern. Her beautiful wrist and delicate fingers touched the lantern. The lotus flowers picked from the bow of the boat were placed at her feet. Her beautiful skirt was next to the petals. Her figure was petite, but she was unusually well-proportioned and beautiful. As if she didn't care, she looked up at the big boat indifferently. Her eyes were charming, and the corners of her eyes were slightly red. She was even more beautiful than the flowers. The young man was stunned for a moment. However, he saw the girl adjust the position of the lantern and sit back down. The boat was small, and the lotus leaves were too high. They covered her face, but it gave her more of a sense of mystery. Seeing that the big boat was about to pass, the young man suddenly pushed the woman away. Then, he stood up and looked outside the boat. He finally saw clearly that a man was fishing on the boat. The girl was squatting down, holding a flower and saying something to the man beside her with a smile. The young man was just taking a look on a whim. He happened to see the man raise his head and reach out to straighten the girl's hair bun. That man only revealed his chin. The young man's eyes were extremely ruthless. Lu Xinglan? Why was he here? Could it be that someone leaked the news that he came to the flower boat tonight? So he was here to assassinate him or follow him. Mother Lu was under house arrest. More than half of Lu Xinglan's power had spread to the capital. Many ministers kept talking about how good Lu Xinglan was. The young man was ruthless when he thought about it. This country was his, not Lu Xinglan's. Weren't Lu Xinglan and the Lu family their watchdogs? What watchdog overshadowed its master's limelight? He said sternly, "Stop the boat and call the guards." The people on the boat were shocked. Those nobles knew how powerful this young man was. She immediately pushed away all the female singers and kicked the pimp. "Stop the ship. Go quickly." On Lu Xinglan's side, his fingers caressed the girl's silky hair. He also straightened the hairpin. Her bun was too loose. Therefore, hairpin could not stay still. Lu Xinglan carelessly put down her hand and said indifferently, "All right, be careful. The hairpin won't fall." Wei Wei cupped her face and revealed a cute smile. She sat and said, "Thank you, young master." Lu Xinglan turned around with a serious expression and hummed an acknowledgement. No one saw that most of the ears under his bamboo hat were red. The fishing rod still couldn't catch a single fish. This was the worst fishing record he had ever had. Lu Xinglan was just about to put away her fishing rod. He saw a familiar figure standing at the bow of the ship. The young man was dressed in casual clothes, and his hair was casually draped over his shoulders. He gave off a lustful feeling. With one look, it was obvious that they were having fun in the boat. Lu Xinglan faintly raised her eyebrows. No wonder the person who sent the message said that they were coming here. It turned out that Yuan Xian was here to have some fun. He followed Yuan Xian out of the palace and brought the news along. Lu Xinglan saw it and couldn't pretend that he didn't see it. He threw away the fishing rod in his hand and then stood up unhurriedly. After blocking the girl, he bowed politely. Chapter 28:08. But he didn't call him His Majesty. Yuan Xian appeared in the wrong place. He was wearing private clothes, so he didn't want anyone to know his identity. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes, hiding the cold mockery in his eyes. He really had nothing better to do. He was having fun among the people. Yuan Xian stood at the bow of the boat, standing high. When he looked down at Lu Xinglan coldly, his arrogance was obvious. He smiled coldly, but thought of something. He suppressed his resentment and showed a friendly smile. "Xinglan, you're also visiting the lotus field tonight. It's not that I didn't know that you, who are always busy with work and never go out to play, have the mood to do this. What a coincidence." When a young man said this, the suspicion and malice in his eyes were obvious. Lu Xinglan's face was calm, his thin lips slightly curved. "I'm really used to being alone at the border. I'm not used to the atmosphere here in the capital, so the people beside me can't stand it. So they drag me to visit the lake, right?" The people beside him? The young man's malevolent gaze fell behind him. But Lu Xinglan had covered her up so well. Wei Wei said to the system, "Cannon fodder?" The system said, "The emperor of the southern kingdom in this plane is called Yuan Xian. He's ambitious and works against the male lead. So he's a cannon fodder with a strong sense of presence." Wei Wei understood. Isn't this more unlucky than cannon fodder? After comprehending so many planes, Wei Wei was also clear. The people she conquered were all favored by the heavens. Whoever killed them would die. Look, she just didn't have many planes to live in, right? She must have died early because she tried to conquer her targets every day. So those who went against her targets either died early or were on their way to early death. Lu Xinglan saw Yuan Xian's venomous gaze fall behind him. His deep eyes darkened a little. Then he saluted and said to Yuan Xian, "Then I won't disturb you. It's late at night, and there are women behind me, so I need to return early." Yuan Xian smiled brightly. "Why did you bring your womenfolk here to play? If you don't play, what are you doing here?" He was still suspicious. This young emperor was naturally suspicious and cruel. He would rather kill a group of people by mistake than let go of one. Sometimes he would even kill people casually for something that didn't exist. Therefore, Lu Xinglan knew very well that no matter how good his reasons were, she would not be able to change her mind. Yuan Xian would still doubt his motives. He even doubted it. Was he following him? And these suspicions were enough for him to kill everyone around him. That was the only way to ensure that all the spies around him would die. As for whether or not there were innocent people, this cruel tyrant didn't care. Lu Xinglan pursed her lips tightly as a trace of murderous intent flashed through her dark eyes. Unfortunately, the person who had been hiding beside Yuan Xian had sent him a message. If Yuan Xian returned to the palace with suspicion in his heart, he reckoned that by tomorrow morning, he would be able to receive news of the death of the person he had hidden beside Yuan Xian. Lu Xinglan didn't show any emotion on her face, but she couldn't help but clench her fists. He was going to comfort Yuan Xian, or just leave, or a reason that he could believe. Lu Xinglan pondered for a while and was about to take a step forward. His hand was gently held by the person behind him. "Young master," Wei Wei poked her head out from behind him. The beautiful girl was smiling, and her eyes were charming but not seductive. "Is she your friend?" she asked with a smile, like an innocent girl who didn't know anything about the world. Slash. Chapter 2809. But she has a lively appearance that young girls don't have, and that pair of beautiful eyes are full of clear curiosity. Yuan Xian was originally coldly observing Lu Xinglan. He began to suspect that the people around him were tipping him off. But for a moment, he was dazzled by the smile of the girl beside Lu Xinglan. Lu Xinglan frowned, wanting her to stand behind him. But Wei Wei Bai had already walked out from behind him, holding his finger and looking at the people on the boat with him. Wei Wei Bai looked up, as if she didn't know the turbulent waves between the two of them. Her voice was clear. "May I ask where the young master on the boat is from? Are you my husband's good friend? There's wine on the boat. Why don't you come down for a get-together?" She was neither servile nor overbearing and didn't think that he was a big shot, so her tone was very natural, like a little sister next door, looking at him with a gentle smile. Yuan Xian was stunned, and then he stuttered. "Your husband?" Hearing his question, Wei Wei Bai looked at the man beside her shyly. Her cheeks were stained with pink, like a pinched apricot flower. Then she said in a low voice, "I'm the one who makes him come out to play. After all, how can he stay at home every day and not do anything? Also, it's so lively outside, and the summer nights are stuffy and hot. Why don't we come out to the lake to cool off?" Although her voice was low, it was clear, so Yuan Xian heard it clearly. Lu Xinglan held her fingers and exerted a little force. He didn't seem to approve of her coming out. But Wei Wei Bai took a step forward and came to the side of the boat, standing among the lotus flowers. It's late at night, and the heat has dissipated. The lake is moist and cold, so it's better for the young master to wear more clothes. My husband and I will leave first. After all, he's not in good health and is used to sleeping early. Yuan Xian looked at Lu Xinglan strangely. Not in good health? Lu Xinglan's martial arts were the best in the world. How could he not be in good health? Could it be that he had some hidden injury, but he didn't show it? The suspicious young king started to be suspicious because of the girl's words. Wei Wei Bai said to the boatman, "Uncle, do you still have wine? Give me a bottle." The old man who was rowing the boat was silent for a while before he threw her a small bottle of wine. Wei Wei Bai let go of Lu Xinglan's hand and held the small wine bottle with both hands. It was a small jar with a seal. It was not heavy, but very delicate. Wei Wei Bai looked up at Yuan Xian and said, "Since you're my husband's friend, it's fate that we met when we went out. This is the wine I made. I hope you don't mind." After saying that, she threw the bottle with all her might. The wide sleeves slid down to her elbows. Her arm, as white as jade, was exposed. Lu Xinglan's expression changed, and she immediately pulled on her sleeve. "It's cold. You're not allowed to show your hand." Yuan Xian had already grabbed the wine bottle with one hand. The small bottle could only fill about 10 glasses. He stared blankly at the ground. However, when he saw Lu Xinglan's worried expression, he smiled coldly. Lu Xinglan could touch women now? He thought that Lu Xinglan was lying to him. After all, everyone knew how much he hated women. How could he come out to the lake with a woman? However, when he reached out to stroke her slightly messy hair, held her hand, and whispered something worriedly, Yuan Xian's heart surged with anger for some unknown reason. He blamed it on the damned secret medicine that had lost its effect. How did he make Lu Xinglan like women? If the Lu family continued to exist, wouldn't he have to bear more pressure? The military power would be controlled by the Lu family for generations. /save button. Chapter 2810. Of course, this thought only briefly flashed through his mind. More importantly, he saw the girl tilt her head and smile. "All right, it's tiring to come out and play. Go back and rest after saying goodbye to your friend." Lu Xinglan seemed to be stunned, but used his finger to caress her cheek. This look, he really liked the way women looked. It couldn't be an act. Yuan Xian held the bottle and watched Lu Xinglan turn around to bid farewell. Then the boat slowly sailed into the lotus. The girl seemed to turn around, her clear eyes filled with gentleness. She smiled and casually turned around again. Yuan Xian couldn't recall his thoughts at that moment. He didn't even suspect Lu Xinglan's purpose. After all, if Lu Xinglan could really touch women and like women, It was natural to bring a woman to the lake. This Lotus Lake was the biggest and best place to play in the capital. At night, people with a little extra money would flock here. It wasn't surprising to meet them. Yuan Xian convinced himself. He didn't even realize that with his suspicious personality, he was so easily convinced. He stood at the bow of the boat for a long time, holding the bottle and frowning. As the cold wind blew, he thought of the girl's words. It was cold at night, so he had to wear more clothes. He was a martial artist. How could he be afraid of this little bit of cold? The songstress rushed over excitedly. "Hey, little brother, why are you here for the wind? Let's go in and do something fun." Yuan Xian's absent-minded expression changed, and he glared at her with his malicious eyes. He pushed her away and said in disgust, "Someone, throw this woman into the lake." After that, he slowly walked into the cabin, holding the bottle tightly in his hand. When he walked into the boat, he suddenly said to the little eunuch beside him, who had also changed into civilian clothes, "Bring me a robe." As he said that, Yuan Xian pulled his unbuttoned robe with one hand. On the other side of the boat, the system said faintly, "Why are you hooking up with cannon fodder?" Wei Bai said, "I'm not hooking up. I'm hooking up just because I smile. I smile at you every day. Why don't you love you?" "Don't I love you enough?" Wei Bai said perfunctorily. "If you say so, then so be it. I'm just helping Lu Xinglan out of trouble. That little brat doesn't look like a good person. His eyes are about to roll to the sky. I just smiled and let him know that Lu Xinglan definitely likes me." After saying this, she helplessly said, "If he falls in love with me like this, then I'm really harming him. Who told me to be born beautiful and hard to give up? Loving me is also his fate." "Ugh, I don't love you, goodbye." Wei Bai giggled. "I won't see you off. Come on, it's another beautiful day of hurting each other." With that said, the boat docked. Lu Xinglan went ashore first and reached out to take her hand off the boat. Wei Bai placed her fingers in his palm. After getting off the boat, she gently smiled and said, "Thank you, my husband." Lu Xinglan held her hand tightly and didn't respond. She just turned around and led her away. Along the way, there were bustling lights and people brushing shoulders. He had forgotten to get on the carriage. Wei Bai didn't remind him either. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the man with a calm face said, "Call me again." Wei Bai was stunned for a moment before she reacted. She softly smiled and said, "Husband." Lu Xinglan stiffened for a while, then continued to walk forward stiffly. After walking for a while on the brightly lit street, the man suddenly said, "Yes." She called him husband. He responded, "Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased to 70. Download the at https://m Sashu.com. Chapter 28:11. Wei Bai felt that this world was going very smoothly. For a man like Lu Xinglan, as long as he didn't do anything big like killing his father. Time was long. As time went by, the favorability would be full. This was a strategy model for a long time. Wei Bai embroidered a duck, no, a mandarin duck sachet, and smiled. It was a beautiful world. Most importantly, the flower skincare products were very effective. Her skin was very good now. If she could get a medal of the most beautiful woman in the universe, it would be perfect. The system saw the host's silly look and calmly ate the Emperor Deluxe brand chocolate. He sighed. He was a little poor and couldn't eat the Cosmic Star chocolate, so he could only nibble on the damn Emperor Trump on his cheeks. The side quest sighed. "Is it good?" The system said, "It's SOSO. I'm sick of it. Next time I'll change it." The side quest said, "Is that so? I recently bought some super awesome food brands. Then I saw that the fridge was too small, so I changed it to a bigger one. It can only adjust the temperature in a series of functions." The system reacted and then showed a warm and awkward smile. "A long time no see. Isn't this a side quest treasure? Do you want to go on a blind date? I've been short of an ATM recently, not a bosom friend." The side quest looked at him coldly. The system laughed. The side quest looked at him with a death stare. The system picked up the shield to block the death stare and continued to laugh. In life, people relied on their cute smiles to survive in the world. The more he smiled, the more people would like him. Then, he would give him more delicious food. The side quest finally said, "I changed a new fridge. It's locked." The system's smile froze. The side quest said, "You ate my food that can be exchanged for 300,000 life points. I have frozen your account. All your life points will be used to pay for my loss." It was calm and professional. It didn't laugh with the system. The system's face was stiff at first, but when it heard that its account was frozen, it immediately said generously, "It's my fault. I'll give you all the life points in my account." This attitude made the side quest's face soften a little. "Since you've admitted your mistake, I'm not that heartless. I'll lower the difficulty of the side quest for you." The system immediately patted its chest and promised, "My account has a lot of life points. It's all because I scrimp and save. Look at me. I'm so poor that I can only eat your food. You know how thrifty I am." When the branch director heard this, his expression softened. Indeed, for someone to bring their host to so many planes, they must have received a lot of life points and credit points. Even the side rewards were given to the system in proportion. Furthermore, it had heard of the legend of System 004 before. Although he was not approachable, Ping, he was approachable. The octopus star, pentagram star, and the like that were brought along were all eventually built up to become kings through huge amounts of wealth. 004 was a super rich man. When he thought of the side quest, he realized that he had actually obtained account number 004. It felt a little unreal. He was going to be rich. He was extremely rich. Thinking about this, he suddenly felt that this repulsive 004 was simply a great philanthropist. He was very handsome, too. The system chimed in, "You've taken advantage of me. Just wait till you're rich. Sigh, the wealth that I scrimped and saved was taken away by you. I might have to eat expired food soon." The branch director immediately shared the password to his refrigerator. "For you to eat." The system's face was gloomy. "If you eat this once, you won't be able to eat in the future." To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 28:12. The system immediately said, "I'm rich. I promise you'll be able to eat your fill for the next few years." The system immediately laughed. "Let's sign the contract. After all, it involves such a large amount of wealth." When he heard the side quest, he was impressed. It immediately took out the contract, and the system signed it. No one could go back on their word. The system steeled its heart and wrote on it, 3 years of luxury food set for the system. The system also signed it immediately, and all its health points were transferred to the system. After the two of them signed, they both laughed. The system said, "Good brother." "What an idiot." The system said, "Good friend." "What a long-term idiot luxury meal ticket." Wei Wei by her to ding. She was embroidering a sachet and felt her eyelids fight, so she closed her eyes. Hearing the familiar ding, she lazily supported her chin with her hand. The system's giggling voice sounded, "My dear, I love you." Wei Wei by what kind of terrifying mission was he going to give her? Did it want her to kill Lu Xinglan's entire family? No, Lu Xinglan's entire family was dead, except for Mother Lu. With Mother Lu's behavior, killing her would probably only reduce Lu Xinglan's favorability by 5 points. Or was it going to destroy the world? Wei Wei Bai's eyes lit up, and she was very alert. "Yes, I miss you too. Miss you to die. Miss you to die. Miss you to die. Miss you to die." Important things need to be said 3 times to show sincerity. The system said eagerly, "The difficulty can only be lowered by 1 level. This can't be helped. The authority is limited. Your previous difficulty was raised too high, so even if it was lowered by 1 level, it would still be more difficult to complete." Wei Wei Bai. "Oh, was it short-circuited by lightning? Power, state, throne." Wei Wei Bai's eyebrows twitched. "Please help the male lead to the change of dynasty and ascend to the throne in 2 months. 2 months. Ascend to the throne? This was the lowered difficulty of the mission. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but ask humbly, "If it's not lowered by 1 level, then what is my mission?" Ding. The mission is for the host to ascend to the throne within half a month and become a strong woman like Wu De. The side quest was also a pity. Although it's a bit difficult to complete, I did choose it on purpose. Do you feel like the main female lead? Wei Wei Bai. Big, very big, big your head. With this comparison, he suddenly felt that letting Lu Xinglan ascend the throne wasn't something unacceptable? And why was the side quest's attitude so gentle? It was too magical. Could it be that it had also fallen in love with her beautiful face and pure soul? Wei Wei by side. Her beauty was really a sin. It was not impossible for Lu Xinglan to become the emperor. Right now, the power of the entire southern nation was in his hands. After so many generations of the Lu family sacrificed themselves in battle, Lu Xinglan's reputation had grown tremendously. Anyone who talked about Lu Xinglan would have to talk about the Lu family's martyrs. He had a huge natural advantage, which was the support of the people. Not to mention, Lu Xinglan was the god of war of the entire Southern Empire. He was also the stabilizing force of the Southern Empire. As long as Lu Xinglan was willing, she would wear the imperial robes tomorrow and kick that little brat off the throne. There would definitely be no problem for him to sit on it. Wei Wei supported her face with her hands and pouted. So this side quest was not a death quest. She suddenly reacted. What's the punishment for failure? Side quest. Oh, disfigurement, soul disfigurement. Wei Wei by. Transmigration system. Adonis, come here. /crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu, download transmigration system. Adonis, come here save button at the bottom to record your reading record. Transmigration system. Adonis, come here, comma. Chapter 28:13. Side mission. I think this is your weakness, so I made this punishment permanent. In the future, all your mission punishments will be disfigurement. Wei Wei by side mission, but I know I made you unhappy. I will definitely change the next side mission in advance. Now that the mission in this plane has been locked, it can't be changed. When Bai Weiwei heard this, she felt a little better. The side mission was so gentle. She really fell in love with it. Disfigurement of the soul was too scary. She felt like she was about to wake up from a dream. If she was disfigured, wouldn't this world lose her beautiful face? This loss was too great. She muttered this sentence to herself. Side mission. The system patted its shoulder comfortingly. My host is like this. You have to get used to it. Side mission rubbed its chin. Who could get used to such a weird host? But then it thought about how it got the account number 004. It didn't seem like it couldn't be tolerated. Lu Xinglan went out to handle official business. There was news from the imperial family. It said that Yuan Xian was building a moon admiring court in the South Garden again and wanted to use military funds. He went to visit the ministers of the Ministry of Revenue one by one today. Then he went to the Prime Minister's house to drink tea. Yuan Xian's desk would probably be full of impeachment reports tomorrow. Using military funds. Wasn't this weakening his power? Yuan Xian's methods were vicious and didn't care about the Southern Empire. This crazy idea even thought that it was better for the Northern Empire to attack the Southern Empire than for the Lu family to cover the sky. This twisted and crazy mentality. It was simply a lunatic. Lu Xinglan was very calm. He was very disappointed in the imperial family. If it wasn't for the Lu family guarding the country for generations, and him inheriting this responsibility, and if the Southern Empire was in a precarious situation, he would have left everything behind and retired to the countryside. Otherwise, who would want this heavy job? He wouldn't starve to death from farming. And he had a virtuous wife at home. Cough, cough, the life of a deity was just like that. Lu Xinglan had never been so anxious to return home. He rode his horse through the main street. There was a long road ahead, and at the end of the road was the Lu residence. The horse's hooves stepped on the long gravel road. Duh. Xin Wu also followed behind him, but he ran too fast, so he was already quite far away. On both sides of the long road were high walls. In the summer, the phoenix flowers bloomed, and the entire tree was red. Lu Xinglan looked up at the flowers and thought that Wei Wei Bai always liked beautiful flowers, although those flowers had been smashed by her and smeared on her face. But this could also be considered as liking flowers. He stretched out his hand and flicked a finger towards the tree. A few red phoenix flowers fell into his arms. A trace of a smile appeared on the man's beautiful face. Under his eyelashes, a pair of black eyes were filled with gentleness. He was just about to pull on the reins and continue forward. Suddenly, he heard the sound of killing intent. This kind of almost inaudible shattering sound was almost drowned out by the clamor of cicadas in summer. However, Lu Xinglan had lived on the battlefield since she was young. The sharpness of the aura of death and the sound of weapons was carved into his bones. The shattering sound was the sound of an arrow being loaded onto a bow. After the string moved, the long arrow suddenly arrived. The light of the arrowhead was like the scythe of the grim reaper in the scorching sun. Ruthlessly and accurately, it shot towards Lu Xinglan's chest. Lu Xinglan's expression turned cold. She leaned to the side and pulled on the reins in her hand, dodging the arrow. But soon, even more arrows rained down on them like a torrential rain. Lu Xinglan knew that the other party came prepared. / comma. Chapter 28:14. They were waiting to ambush him. He heard Xin Wu rushing over to help him. Lu Xinglan pulled out the long sword beside the horse and knocked down all the arrows. But one arrow was still very fast and pierced into his shoulder. Half of the arrow went into his flesh and blood started to flow out. Lu Xinglan looked at it expressionlessly. This kind of small wound was nothing to him. He did not pull out the arrow, because if he did, more blood would flow out. Xin Wu rode his horse and quickly arrived in front of Lu Xinglan. He took out his longbow expressionlessly. Lu Xinglan said coldly, 3 on the east wall, 2 on the south corner, more than 10 people in a row to the north. Lu Xinglan had already memorized the direction of the arrow that was fired. Xin Wu nodded and put 3 arrows on his bow, shooting towards the east. There were exactly 3 screams. Although the others were panicking, they still put arrows on their bows calmly. But it was too late. The swords were all knocked down by Lu Xinglan. Xin Wu was like a cruel grim reaper. Every time he attacked, no one could escape the punishment of death. One defended while the other attacked. He killed all the assassins who blocked his way. Wei Wei Bai heard the system say, "Someone is killing the male lead outside the door." Wei Wei Bai was pulling petals to make rouge. She asked, "Who sent them?" The system said, "Who else could it be? That Emperor cannon fodder. He can't wait to kill the male lead, but since he's so eager to kill him, this cannon fodder probably doesn't have much time left." Wei Wei Bai smiled. "That's great. Lu Xinglan is being murdered, so if he's hot-blooded, he'll be able to complete the mission." The system nodded in agreement and took a big bite of the super luxurious golden diamond drumstick. Lu Xinglan took care of those people. He walked through the door. He reeked of blood and held a sword in his hand. His long hair was messy behind him. His white robe was mostly red with blood spots. He looked like a red plum blossom, but also like a demon. Lu Xinglan wiped his face expressionlessly. There was blood on his face, too. He looked at it indifferently and did not care. Xin Wu went to call the doctor. As he habitually walked out of the house, he suddenly thought of something and his expression froze. He had to treat the wound first and then take a bath. Otherwise, it would scare the people in the house. With that in mind, Lu Xinglan turned to leave. However, he heard a soft voice call out from behind him. "Husband?" Lu Xinglan's footsteps froze. She didn't come back to her senses. She only responded with a faint hum. Then he said, "I have something to do. I'll take my leave first." After saying that, he coldly raised his foot and was about to step forward. But the corner of his clothes was tugged. Lu Xinglan's entire body froze. She loosened her grip on the corner of his shirt and gently hooked her fingers around his again. "Husband, what's wrong?" she asked worriedly. Lu Xinglan pursed her lips and lowered her eyelashes to hide the hesitation in her eyes. Then he turned around and revealed the bloodstain on his shoulder. There was no way to hide it unless he pushed her away and ran away. But when he wanted to push her, he couldn't. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were a little sluggish for a moment, and then there was a little panic. This panic was suppressed by her. She calmed down and said, "Let's go in. Has the doctor called?" Lu Xinglan thought that she would be scared to tears, but he only saw her worried expression. He heaved a sigh of relief. Yes, he did. She immediately took his hand and walked into the house. "How deep is the wound on your shoulder? How deep is the arrowhead?" To stop the wound, Lu Xinglan didn't pull out the arrowhead. It looked bloody and frightening. But Wei Wei Bai was unusually calm. She asked him to sit down, brought hot water, and cut open his clothes to reveal the wound. Then she began to use the hot water to wipe the blood around him. The doctor soon arrived. He was half lying down, and the doctor began to remove the arrowhead. Lu Xinglan was used to this kind of scene, but he stared sideways at the girl squatting by the bed. The girl's eyes were filled with deep worry. Her fingers gripped his fingertips tightly. She forced herself to be calm, but her trembling fingers betrayed her. She was still afraid, but she didn't want to burden him and chose to force herself to be calm. The moment the doctor removed the arrowhead, Lu Xinglan's face turned pale and his muscles immediately tightened. Wei Wei Bai cried out in alarm. Finally, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She helplessly held his palm with both hands. It was as if this action could make him feel better. The doctor bandaged the wound. Lu Xinglan regained his spirit. His pale face was full of sweat, but he slightly turned his eyes. His gaze was deep and gentle. I'm fine. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips. Her lips had lost their color. She said, I'm not fine. Lu Xinglan was puzzled. He saw her lower her head and rest her eyes on his palm. Tears fell. You really worried me, Lu Xinglan. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 28:15. Her soft face leaned against his palm, and her fluttering eyelashes were like a small fan scraping his palm. Cold tears seeped into the gaps between his fingers. Lu Xinglan's pale and calm face showed a trace of uneasiness. His voice was low and contained an imperceptible helplessness. Don't cry. I'm fine. It's just a small wound. I'm used to it. Lu Xinglan thought that if he said that, she would not worry. However, he saw the girl's tears fall even more fiercely. She did not look up. Her lips were tightly pursed, and her delicate brows were furrowed because of sadness. Why are you? Her voice was muffled with sobs. So heartbreaking. Lu Xinglan looked at her blankly, as if he did not understand. Heartbroken, he suddenly moved his tear-filled fingers. The girl looked up in shock. Her eyes were red, and so was her nose. She was unusually cute and pitiful. She bit her lip. Traces of tears were all over her face. Lu Xinglan's fingers trembled. He touched her tears, but he thought of something and quickly stopped. He wiped his fingers on his robe to make sure that they were dry. He immediately covered her face with his fingers and wiped her tears. Don't cry. Next time, I'll take you to the lake. Don't you like those flowers? At this point, Lu Xinglan took out a phoenix flower from his arms. The flower was incomplete. However, it was still fresh and beautiful. Look, is this flower beautiful? After saying that, Lu Xinglan realized that the flower was incomplete. Lu Xinglan frowned and immediately suppressed his tone, trying to be calm. Yes, it's fine. I'll bring you more next time. Then, he wanted to take the flower back as if nothing had happened. However, a pair of soft hands held his hand. Then, she smiled with tears in her eyes and said, It's beautiful. Lu Xinglan stared at her silently. His deep eyes were slowly covered by an extremely gentle emotion. His fingers gently approached her hair, and then he pinned the flower to her ear. The bright color of the flower made the girl's delicate and fair face look a little rosy. Lu Xinglan's voice was hoarse. Very beautiful. She was the most beautiful person he had ever met in his life. But that was in the past or in the future. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 75. Inside the palace, all the eunuchs and palace maids were trembling with fear, not daring to breathe loudly. Yuan Xian smashed a vase and kicked away a young eunuch. You still have the face to tell me about your failure? Capture all the losers and execute them. The great eunuch trembled as he knelt on the ground. He did not dare to raise his head to say, Your Majesty, they are all dead. Not a single one was left. They were all killed by Lu Xinglan. Yuan Xian turned around. The pale and treacherous youth with long hair draped over his shoulders said fiercely, Then take back the corpse and grind the bones to dust. After he finished speaking, his thin red lips curled up coldly. I've truly underestimated Lu Xinglan. I thought that I would definitely kill her when she was unprepared. He thought he could wait. However, she didn't know that the last time she saw him in the lotus field, he had a stomach full of anger. The more he thought about it, the more he felt threatened. The more he thought about it, the more resentment he felt. This country belonged to his family, not Lu Xinglan. Why did he have to be so arrogant? Everyone in the southern nation was talking about that damned Lu Xinglan. Moreover, he wanted to build a moon admiring court. All he did was embezzle some military funds. Then those damned pedantic officials would come and stop him. He was the master of this country. He was the emperor. Chapter 28:16. Who dared to make decisions for him? He could do whatever he wanted. The whole world belonged to him. Why should he listen to them? He clearly knew that he should continue to endure. After all, Lu Xinglan's power was too great. In addition, he had the will of the people. If he made a move, Lu Xinglan would be vigilant and have some rebellious thoughts. His current power was not enough to wrestle with him. The prime minister hurried over and saw the mess on the ground, as well as the ashen-faced palace maids and eunuchs. He immediately knelt down and saluted. Your subject salutes your majesty. Long live your majesty. Yuan Xian threw a paperweight at his feet. What? Are you here to persuade me? Can't even afford to build a moon admiring court? The prime minister immediately said respectfully, Your majesty, you have to bear with the humiliation. That thief Lu Xinglan may have evil intentions. First, you have to coax him, then find an opportunity to ruin his reputation. Finally, you have to kill him. Yuan Xian glared at him and said, How can you ruin his reputation? Didn't you give your daughter to him? In the end, you were kicked out by him. This is simply a disgrace. When the prime minister thought of his daughter being kicked out of the temple by Lu Xinglan, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. Recently, there were rumors that he likes women, and he especially favors one concubine. He even put his mother under house arrest for this concubine. If this news spreads, he will definitely be reviled by the public. After all, filial piety was the highest. Whoever was unfilial would be pointed at the spine and scolded. Yuan Xian paced back and forth in frustration, especially when he heard about the concubine. He gnashed his teeth in hatred. Too slow. I don't want to wait. The prime minister said, Your majesty has waited for so many years. Why can't you wait a little longer? Although Yuan Xian was suspicious and irritable, he still had patience. Why did he go crazy after returning from the lake trip? Yuan Xian glared at him fiercely. Even you dare to control me? The prime minister immediately bowed. Your subject does not dare. Your subject is guilty. A trace of murderous intent appeared in Yuan Xian's eyes, but he also knew that the prime minister was the most powerful person on his side. Killing him would do him no good. Yuan Xian suddenly said, It's my birthday in 3 days. I'm going to hold a grand birthday banquet and have Lu Xinglan bring her family to attend. Just treat it as my compromise. When the time comes, I'll just send my regards to her. This would ease Lu Xinglan's heart. He couldn't suppress the killing intent in his heart, which was why he made such an impulsive decision. He regretted it afterwards. After all, if they couldn't kill Lu Xinglan, it would be over if Lu Xinglan decided to rebel. When the prime minister heard this, he knew that Yuan Xian had calmed down. He immediately smiled and said, Your majesty is wise. Yuan Xian raised his eyebrows coldly. Then they began to spread rumors that he was a pervert and unfilial son to his mother. Bit by bit, they tainted his perfect reputation. The prime minister replied, Yes, your majesty. Yuan Xian said coldly, Leave. The prime minister withdrew. Yuan Xian stood in place. After a long time, he flung his sleeves and walked inside. He sat in front of the table and stared at the memorials that prevented him from building the moon viewing pavilion. He snorted coldly. Then, without knowing why, his eyes lightly fell on a bookshelf next to him. There was a small earthenware pot of wine. He didn't even open the seal. It was quiet. Yuan Xian stared for a long time. Suddenly, his face flushed red, and he looked away in panic. Xian Wu gave Lu Xinglan a handwritten order from the palace. Lu Xinglan casually glanced at it, and threw it aside. It was Yuan Xian's birthday banquet in 3 days. The order asked him to bring his family. He clearly knew that Mother Lu was under house arrest by him, but he deliberately made this move. Chapter 28:17. He picked up the pen and was about to continue drawing the map. However, he heard the familiar sound of footsteps approaching from afar. His fingers froze, and he was about to throw the pen away. But he heard Wei Wei Bai's voice. "Young master." Lu Xinglan put down the pen and turned around with a calm face. "Yes, I'm back." Wei Wei Bai was holding a plate with bandages and medicine on it. She glanced at the ink on the table and the ink pen that was casually thrown aside, and the half-drawn map. The girl frowned and sighed unhappily. "Why are you working again? Didn't I tell you to rest when you're injured?" Lu Xinglan put his fist to his mouth as if nothing had happened and coughed to cover it up. "No, I'm just tidying up. I didn't use the pen to draw." Wei Wei Bai looked at him helplessly for a while. She saw that he was looking around guiltily. Then she walked him and put down the plate. Then she rolled up his sleeves and said gently, "Take off your clothes." Lu Xinglan's back was facing her. When he heard this, he lowered his eyelashes and blushed. He took off half of his clothes and straightened his back, not showing a trace of helplessness. The girl behind him put her hand gently on his shoulder and began to remove the bandages. There was a faint fragrance with the smell of flowers. She lowered her head and touched the area around his wound with her soft fingers. The coolness of the medicine slowly covered it. Under the light, the two of them were quietly intertwined. After Wei Wei Bai applied the medicine, she began to bandage him. The slope of the man's shoulder was perfect and beautiful. When she touched it with her fingers, she could see that the skin under his shoulder had many light white marks of healing. Wei Wei Bai's fingers paused and touched a deeper mark. Lu Xinglan's shoulder stiffened. He felt that the slight coolness of the girl's fingertips seemed to have some kind of indescribable magic. A little itch spread from her fingers. He lowered his eyes, and his breathing became heavy, and his fingers couldn't help but move. He had a feeling that he wanted to hold her fingers. Without waiting for his hand to reach out, he heard Wei Wei Bai say softly, "Were these wounds all made at the border?" Lu Xinglan's finger froze, and she quickly retracted it. She said calmly, "Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just a small injury." He was afraid that she would cry again. He immediately explained, "They're really not fatal. I've been through special training since I was young, so I can avoid all fatal attacks as much as possible." Although that was what he said. However, if they were to really enter the battlefield, they would only have a slight chance of survival compared to others. How many powerful people had died on the battlefield due to bad luck? Lu Xinglan felt that her luck was pretty good. At the very least, he had never died before. Wei Wei Bai suddenly said, "Who wants to kill you?" Lu Xinglan's originally gentle expression froze for a moment. Then, she said in an indifferent tone, "Maybe he's overshadowed his master." He knew who wanted to kill him. However, he didn't expect the other party to be so anxious. So stupid. There were still many problems in the southern nation. Kill Lu Xinglan. The north immediately swept over. Who could stop him? Lu Xinglan couldn't think of anyone who could stop him. If she could find him, even Yuan Xian himself could. He would have left long ago. Why would he still be here? In the past, he didn't have any other goals. He just lived for the Lu family. Now he was a little weak. Chapter 28:18. That small thought had shaken him so much. He already had someone he cared about. He was no longer a wandering soul who lived for the Nan Kingdom without a goal. So if there was really no other way, he would take her away. He would try his best and not force it. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be stunned for a long time before she woke up from his question. Yes, Lu Xinglan had already turned around. He stretched out a finger and gently pressed against her lips. Don't say it. After all, he was the emperor. How could he talk about her behind her back so easily? Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes fluttered. Her lips moved slightly and brushed against the man's finger. His face turned red, and he immediately retracted his finger. Then, he turned around as if nothing had happened and did not say anything else. Wei Wei Bai did not say anything. After the bandage was done, Wei Wei Bai pinched his clothes with her fingers. Suddenly, she sighed softly. My heart aches for you. Lu Xinglan, this is too dangerous. Haven't you thought about how to make yourself safer? For example, kicking away that bastard on top. Sitting on the golden chair. How satisfying. Lu Xinglan was silent for a while before saying slowly, I thought about it. I wanted to hand over the military power and leave this place. Wei Wei Bai, so unambitious. She immediately tried to persuade him. Without the military power, wouldn't you be in more danger? It would be easier to kill you. Lu Xinglan shook his head gently and revealed a smile. I have a backup plan. Once I leave, no one will be able to find me. He was still confident about this. Wei Wei Bai, damn it, was this a 1,000-year-old turtle? He was already being murdered, but he could still tolerate it? She racked her brains and said, Don't you have a trace of resentment? Lu Xinglan was silent for a while. His expression was more solemn and gloomy. He said, I do have some resentment, and I have also thought of some rebellious thoughts. But the Lu family has been loyal for generations. This heavy reputation was built by many heroic souls. I don't want to bear the reputation of a traitor. Otherwise, I will be letting the Lu family's plaque down. If the Nan kingdom could be maintained like this, even if he was resentful, he could persevere. If the Southern Empire was ruined by the imperial family to the point that there was no chance of survival, at that time, he might even think of rebelling. Anyway, the country was going to be destroyed, so he didn't care about his reputation. But now, if the country were to perish in that case, he might not choose to seize power and betray, but to leave. Because the girl by his side couldn't withstand the bloodshed that would ensue when he seized power. If he took her away, she would be able to live a peaceful life. Lu Xinglan's eyes were dark and determined. He pursed his lips and pondered for a while. Then, he said in a hoarse voice, In the future, even if we reach the end of the road, I will not abandon you. I will take you with me and leave this place. This was the most passionate thing he could say. Even if it was reserved, it was unusually deep. Wei Wei Bai, if Yuan Xian was a brat, Lu Xinglan was a son of a bitch. How could he be so tolerant? Was he still a man? That didn't seem to be the case. Last time, when she laid down and asked him to do it, he didn't do it. Now that he had almost been killed, he was still so patient. Since he was forced into a corner, he might as well just leave. Wei Wei Bai only wanted to carve the word bitch on his face. After Lu Xinglan finished making this promise, he felt that it was a little too rash. He looked sideways slightly, but he didn't dare to really turn his head. He could only pretend to be calm and say, It's already late. Don't be too tired. The girl behind him was silent for a long time, just when Lu Xinglan felt that the atmosphere was a little wrong. Suddenly, there was a gentle touch on a light-colored mark on his back. Her soft lips kissed gently. The girl's faint breath blew on the healed wound mark. Lu Xinglan was stunned, but he heard her whisper softly behind him, Rest, young master. Her words were a little ambiguous and gentle. /A button, comma. Chapter 28:19. Her voice became shy again. I'll take off your clothes. Lu Xinglan's face was stiff and calm. He was so calm that he looked like a statue and didn't dare to move. Wei Wei Bai's lips left his back and slowly took off his outer robe. The girl's fingers were always cold. The man sat with his eyelashes like fans. His thin lips were slightly pursed, and he didn't move. The outer robe was taken off, revealing a thin white shirt underneath. The outline of the man's back was unusually good-looking. Under the thin white shirt, the protrusion of his shoulder blades could be faintly seen. His muscles were unusually tense. It seemed to be because of her proximity. Wei Wei Bai bent down slightly. He was tall. Even if he was sitting, she could touch his neck by lowering her head slightly. There was a cool medicinal scent on his body. There was also a slight smell of blood. But more than that, there was a faint sandalwood scent on this man that didn't dissipate. It was the incense that he lit to calm his nerves over the years. And after she came, he hadn't lit this kind of incense for a while. Most of the time, he used a fainter but sweet flower bud fragrance. It was more to a girl's taste. When Lu Xinglan breathed, he didn't smell his own scent at all. It was hers. It was soft and light, but it smelled like a girl's scent. It made him want to hold his breath, but he couldn't bear to. After Wei Wei Bai took off his outer robe, she said softly, "Quickly rest." Lu Xinglan sat stiffly for a while before nodding and getting up. Then he turned around and was about to step over to the bed. Suddenly, he bumped into a soft and petite body. The girl wasn't tall. Her head bumped directly into his shoulder. Wei Wei Bai was also shocked, but she didn't avoid it. Instead, her eyelashes drooped, and there was a hint of redness on her face. She looked sweet and delicate. He stood still and let her lean on him. He stretched out his hand and couldn't bear to push her away. Instead, he gently placed it on her thin shoulder. He said in a low and hoarse voice, "Where did you bump into?" Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and remained silent. Then, she nervously shook her head. The two of them stood there quietly like two dumbstruck geese. With great difficulty, Wei Wei Bai finally took a deep breath and left his embrace. Then she turned and walked to the bed to tidy up the quilt. Lu Xinglan stood there for a while and stared at her bent back, as well as her thin waist. Then he walked over, just as he was about to reach out to help. Without waiting for him to bend over, he suddenly saw the side of the girl's burning face. Her delicate red face seemed to be dyed with her lipstick. He also pursed his lips and felt the tips of his ears turn red. Under the dim yellow light, there was an indescribable tension in the atmosphere. This kind of tension was different from that of life and death on the battlefield. However, compared to the moment between life and death, his heart was beating faster. Lu Xinglan took a deep breath and barely managed to suppress her surging emotions. She couldn't bear to scare her and was about to tell her to rest. However, he heard the girl's figure, which was incomparably weak, hesitant, and shy. "Young master, are you feeling better?" Lu Xinglan was taken aback, but he saw by Wei Wei raise her eyes. Her white face was flushed, and there was a hint of a charming smile. "That's right. Can you touch me now?" Lu Xinglan only felt his heart beating extremely fast. His eyebrows also jumped, and his fingers couldn't help but clench tightly. His mind went blank for a moment. Only her words kept echoing in his mind. "Can you touch me now? Can—" Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes and didn't say anything, but his hand gently touched her waist. The girl was a little ticklish and flinched. She seemed to want to dodge, but she forced herself not to move. Slash. Chapter 28:20. Her eyes were misty, and there was a pure expression on her delicate and beautiful face, but it was so charming that it could bewitch people. Lu Xinglan's fingers tightened, and he was about to pull her into his arms. But the smile on the girl's face disappeared. Then, she calmly took a few steps back and bowed to him politely. "Young master, you should rest first." Only then did she reveal a small smile and casually touched the flowers on her hair. The girl was beautiful. "You've just recovered and need a transition period. I won't disturb you. We'll sleep in separate beds today." Lu Xinglan looked at her blankly. He seemed to be unable to react. The girl didn't care about him anymore, but turned around and walked out with her skirt fluttering. The system was munching on the platinum sunflower seeds. "What's wrong? Wei Wei Bai. Isn't he very tolerant? Just let him be. His head is about to be chopped off, and this son of a bitch still wants to play the rural recluse. Look at him. He might as well just become a eunuch. Wouldn't that be more perfect?" 3 months to change Lu Xinglan's mind and change the dynasty. He thought it wouldn't be difficult. In the end, he met a ninja turtle. He tolerated. Anyway, he wasn't a man. She couldn't tease him to death. Wei Wei Bai stepped out of the door with one foot and coldly snorted. The system heard this, and then it was blocked. Oh, did the host flirt too much? After all, she wasn't flirting with a real eunuch. The system, who was used to being blocked, slowly picked up the #1 super expensive coffee in the universe and elegantly took a sip. Ah, these days were really beautiful. The side mission sucker was really good. It was so kind that it could move heaven and earth. It used the millions of life points in its bank account in exchange for 3 years of free luxury food. When the system thought of its debt, it immediately blocked the account and escaped. The side mission signed, and the name of the account was transferred to itself. In the past, it didn't believe in good people. After meeting the host, there were no good people in this world. Now it believed the side mission great philanthropist. It had fallen in love with it. Wei Wei Bai was also smiling, but before her other foot could step out of the door, she had already stepped out of the door. The man behind her had already grabbed her waist with one hand and closed the door with the other. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. She quickly turned around, only to see the man in front of her take a few steps forward and force her against the door. However, Lu Xinglan pressed closer. She touched her waist with one hand and touched the flower in her hair with the other. He lowered his head, and his breath was a little hot. Sleeping in separate beds? Wei Wei Bai raised her head and seemed to be a little nervous as she laughed. Isn't it because I'm afraid that my husband has just recovered from his illness and can't exercise vigorously? And your wound? She didn't even finish her words. The man in front of her had already lowered his head and blocked her words. He had thought of this countless times when he looked at her from the side at night. He had been holding it in all this while. He didn't dare to go overboard with her. After all, she was still young. Her eyes were so charming, but they were so pure that no one dared to profane her. Lu Xinglan had always used this reason to restrain herself, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. Wei Wei Bai reached out to push him away, but he didn't make things difficult for her. Instead, he panted and rested his head on her thin shoulder. His voice was low and hoarse. Wei Wei, can I? This weak plea was wrapped in a shaky sense of reason. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and finally said with difficulty, no. Lu Xinglan's fingers gently pressed against her lips, and his lips landed on her pink and white neck. Slash. Chapter 28-21. Small and fragmented. A bit rusty, but with irresistible passion. Wei Wei Bai, why can't you bear it? When you shouldn't bear it, shouldn't you bear it boldly? The night slowly deepened. No one paid attention to the candlelight, and it gradually extinguished. The candlelight made a crackling sound, and it was filled with darkness. Only the moonlight shone through the window, illuminating the messy clothes on the ground. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 80. The emperor's birthday banquet was extremely grand. On the road outside the palace, bright lights spread all along the way. All kinds of people were invited to perform, and lively singing troops made the usually cold and quiet palace gate very noisy. Yuan Xian stood on the palace wall and watched unhappily. The ministers who came to attend all got off the carriage outside the palace. He finally saw the familiar sound of horse hooves. It was Lu Xinglan's. He never rode in a carriage, but this time the sound of horse hooves was a bit slow. He looked carefully and saw Lu Xinglan riding a horse, slowly walking, and beside him was a carriage. The curtain on the small window of the carriage was half open. It was too far to see clearly, but he saw that Lu Xinglan seemed to have heard the person in the carriage say something and couldn't help but laugh. Yuan Xian raised an eyebrow and coldly snorted. The head eunuch carefully reminded, it should be General Lu's concubine, who didn't know that Lu Xinglan hated women. It was rare that he was enlightened for a woman. This kind of inconceivable thing spread all over the court. The people all heard about it. The reputation of that concubine also followed. They all said that she had to be beautiful to be able to move a man like Lu Xinglan. The head eunuch saw Yuan Xian's expression become even uglier. He tried to figure out the emperor's intention and immediately said with an ugly expression, but General Lu is too arrogant. His Majesty's birthday banquet, he actually let a mere servant come in. A concubine was a servant, not to mention that the concubine was indeed a servant. But when this sentence came out, Yuan Xian immediately raised his foot in anger and kicked the old eunuch out. Who is a servant? You're rebelling. Zhen didn't say anything. Is it your turn to talk about it? The old eunuch immediately kowtowed and begged for mercy, slapping himself repeatedly. Yuan Xian couldn't care less about him and immediately rushed down. The eunuch immediately followed, and everyone was at a loss. Just a moment ago, he had come to look at the city walls in high spirits, thinking that he was here to watch a circus. But after looking at the carriages of the ministers for a long time, when he saw Lu Xinglan's carriage, he immediately got angry and stopped looking. Could it be that His Majesty was angry again after seeing Lu Xinglan? The carriage entered the palace gates. Lu Xinglan had special privileges. Wei Wei Bai saw that everyone else was alighting in front of the carriage. He swaggered into the palace gates with the carriage in tow. He couldn't help but complain to the system. She's not rebelling, yet she wants all kinds of privileges. Is Lu Xinglan deliberately looking for trouble? This guy was swaggering around as if he didn't care about the royal family. However, he had no intention of overthrowing the royal family. How stupid would one have to be to do such a thing? The system said, because the male lead hates the royal family. To him, protecting the country is his goal, and the royal family is his stumbling block. He despises the royal family, while protecting the southern kingdom is not conflicting. Wei Wei Bai said, which part is not conflicting? Isn't he afraid that the royal family will retaliate and kill him one day? The system said, if they don't kill him, the male lead's momentum will continue to grow. When he dies, the royal family will be ants under his feet, unable to do anything. Download the at https://m/sashu.com. Chapter 28-22. Wei Wei Bai held her forehead and felt a headache coming on. She had forgotten about the halo of being the chosen one. It was just that no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't die. She had secretly hinted a few times during this period of time. The result was that Lu Xinglan would never rebel, because to him, it was easy to rebel but unnecessary. So, he wouldn't rebel. Wei Wei Bai looked at the 3 months and thought that it was a long time. In fact, it was very short. It was so short that the day when she saw her soul disfigured and scared the system to death was coming. So during this period of time, she looked at the mirror whenever she had time. She was worried that if she was disfigured in the future, she wouldn't be able to look at it anymore. After getting off the carriage, Lu Xinglan took her to see the huge lake in the palace. It was full of koi fish. There were also beautiful red lotuses. The brightly lit palace was unusually lively. Lu Xinglan held her hand and slowly walked forward. When the banquet starts later, sit in the women's section and wake up after eating. I'll deal with it for a while and then take you to see the juggling. It was rare to see such a lively juggling. There were also opera troupes invited in advance from all over the country. This was impossible to see on a normal day. The cost was huge, and there had to be a reason to do so. The emperor's birthday was the best reason, although Lu Xinglan didn't agree with such extravagance and waste. However, in recent years, the trade market he opened at the border had become lively. He could also earn a huge amount of money to maintain the daily operation of the Southern Army. As long as there was no war, it was a stalemate. He wasn't afraid that the royal family would use some reason to deduct the military funds given by the imperial court. So Lu Xinglan thought that it would be good to bring Wei Wei Bai to see it. It was rare to see such a lively scene. It would be difficult to see it next time. As a girl, she had always been in the residence and had never made a fuss about going out to play. His heart ached when he saw it. As for the royal family, he would leave after dealing with them. The failed assassination just now should have made Yuan Xian not dare to act rashly. He knew Yuan Xian too well, so this assassination was very unexpected, because it wasn't like him. Although he was cruel, he was unusually patient and was an idiot. There was no benefit in killing him at this time. Lu Xinglan was still trying to figure out the reason for killing him. However, when he was invited to the birthday party, he saw Yuan Xian admitting defeat. Lu Xinglan reminded Wei Wei Bai with concern. I will have the palace maids follow you. I won't let you get lost. Wei Wei Bai held the lotus-colored handkerchief and chuckled. Am I a child? Why are you so worried? This teasing was like a sweet fruit, sweet to the ears. Lu Xinglan stared at her blankly. Then, she looked away as if she had thought of something. Her body stiffened slightly. Then he held her hand and walked towards the palace banquet. He didn't say anything along the way. When the palace maids arrived, she would sit down and wait for the banquet to start. Lu Xinglan let go of her hand and watched as she turned to leave. He then called out in a low and hoarse voice, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai turned around. She saw the man standing under the light. The delicate halo fell on his excessively handsome face, and there was a kind of sudden amazement, like a fairy. He looked at her quietly. Then his thin lips curled slightly, revealing a gentle smile. "Nothing, I just wanted to see you." It was such a small distance. He could see her just by looking up. However, he still felt that they had to be separated for a meal and was not satisfied. Lu Xinglan never thought that he would be so wishy-washy one day. However, he saw the girl looking at him with bright eyes. She revealed a sweet smile and said, "Let's watch the show together later." Eating was secondary. The main reason was to watch the show and sideshow. Lu Xinglan's eyes were full of tenderness. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 85. This favorability was on steroids. Wei Bai was not surprised and followed the palace maid forward. She looked at the side mission again. Progress, 0. Lu Xinglan, that bastard, it was annoying to see his favorability increase. As she walked, she suddenly felt that the road was too long. Wei Bai glanced at the palace maid, but saw that the palace maid returned to her senses and respectfully handed the lantern in her hand to her. "Miss, it's in front. You can go there yourself." After saying this, the palace maid hurriedly left. Wei Bai held the lantern and stood there speechlessly for a while. What was going on? Could it be that bastard Yuan Xian thought it through and directly killed Lu Xinglan at the birthday banquet by smashing the cup as a signal? This was good. It was best to make Lu Xinglan so angry that he rebelled. Just as she was about to let the system recognize the way, she saw a person's shadow in the corner in front of her. Wei Bai tilted her head and said with a light smile, "Sorry, it's my first time in the palace, and I'm not familiar with the roads. May I ask where the banquet is?" The figure in the corner froze. After a while, he lowered his voice and said, "Go back and walk a dozen steps. If you see a eunuch, let him take you there." The figure seemed to be hesitating whether to come out or not. In the end, he could only stand in the corner in fear. He felt that he was too impulsive. How could he let someone bring her here? Just as he was about to leave. Then, he saw a lantern appear in the corner, and the soft light shone down. The girl's soft and boneless fingers pressed on the wooden frame of the lantern and poked her head in a look at him. Her eyes were gentle, but there was a hint of bewitching charm. "It's you. Aren't you my husband's friend?" Yuan Xian, who was standing in the dark and illuminated by the lantern, stood there stiffly. Then, his face slowly turned red. /record. Quick transmigration system. Male god, come here. Chapter 28-23. The night was dark. The halo of the lantern dyed the darkness. Wei Bai looked at him curiously with a calm expression. "Are you also here to attend Her Majesty's birthday banquet?" Yuan Xian moved his lips, but didn't say anything. Wei Bai smiled. "What's your name?" Yuan Xian was silent for a moment before saying in a low voice, "Xiao Bao." As soon as he said this name, Yuan Xian's eyebrows twitched. This was his nickname. Other than his father, who had died early, no one dared to call him by this name. Even his mother couldn't. Just as he was about to change his words, he saw the girl in front of him lower her head and smile. Her eyes were bright, as if they were full of stars. Xiao Bao. This name, was it very funny? Yuan Xian's eyes became cruel. She dared to laugh at him? She was reckless. However, he saw Wei Bai raise her head. Her eyes were gentle, but her smile was unusually innocent and sincere. "I think your parents also cherish and love you. This name is the best they can expect of you." If they didn't like her, they wouldn't have given her such a nickname. It was because they loved her too much that they doted on her so casually. The cruelty and distortion in Yuan Xian's eyes dissipated bit by bit. Instead, he was a little embarrassed. He could clearly endure and deal with that girl, Lu Xinglan, patiently and maturely. Why did he feel like he didn't know where to put his limbs when facing her? Wei Bai suddenly looked back. Her voice was gentle. "Then I'll leave first. The banquet should have started. I don't know if the palace maid is in a hurry to go to the toilet and left me here. I'm not familiar with this place, so I don't dare to wander around and cause trouble." Yuan Xian was silent for a moment. Suddenly, he took a step forward. "I will take you to the banquet hall." The palace maid deliberately brought her here and took a few detours. She didn't know where to go if she walked by herself. Wei Wei Bai walked out of the dark with a lantern in her hand. The slender and elegant girl smiled sweetly. Okay, thank you, young Master Xiaobao. Young Master Xiaobao. Yuan Xian froze for a moment, then turned and walked away with his head lowered. Wei Wei Bai followed along. They were a few steps away from each other, neither too far nor too close. It was an unusually polite distance. Wei Wei Bai would occasionally ask a few more questions, such as where did he work, and whether he had known her husband for a long time. Yuan Xian couldn't come up with anything at the moment, so he could only fly into a rage out of humiliation. Why are you asking so many questions? Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Yuan Xian stopped talking for a moment, thinking that he had scared her. However, he heard her say softly, I just want to get to know my husband. I'm a woman who stays at home every day. I don't know how difficult it is for him to be outside. With one more friend, it will be easier for him. When Yuan Xian heard this, he was immediately enraged. But her eyes were gentle, delicate, and weak. He was also afraid of scaring her. She could only suppress her anger and say sarcastically, he's so good. Who doesn't respect and love him? When he goes out, those unmarried girls throw flowers and fruits at him. He can open a shop. When Wei Wei Bai heard this, she immediately laughed. He's really popular. Yuan Xian sneered. Aren't you afraid that he likes women now and will go out to attract bees and butterflies? Wei Wei Bai shook her head lightly. I only want him to be well. Everything else doesn't matter. Yuan Xian felt the anger in his chest turn into a sharp sword. It was so twisted that his heart hurt. Why was Lu Xinglan so good? Would she die if she didn't praise him? When Yuan Xian saw that they had arrived at the banquet hall, he casually pointed to the inner hall of the womenfolk. There, just go in. When a little eunuch saw that there was a distinguished guest, he immediately came out to greet them respectfully. Chapter 28-24. When he saw Yuan Xian, his eyes almost popped out and he was about to kneel down in fear. However, he saw Yuan Xian staring at him coldly, like the god of death. The little eunuch trembled and couldn't say a word. Then he said, This is Lu Xinglan's wife. Why aren't you welcoming her in and serving her well? If you don't serve her well, be careful of your brains. This sentence came out too smoothly. Yuan Xian immediately shut up. He was worried that Wei Wei Bai would hear something. He couldn't help but look back and see that Wei Wei Bai wasn't paying attention to him. Instead, she was looking around curiously. The scenery here was good. There were flowers everywhere. Girls liked this kind of decoration. He pursed his lips. Knowing that she didn't notice, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. Then he turned and said to Wei Wei Bai, Then I'll leave first. I still have something to do. Wei Wei Bai hurriedly bowed and said to him, Take care, young Master Xiaobao. Yuan Xian curled his lips indifferently and left in large strides. When he reached the corner of the flowers, his face suddenly turned red. Young Master Xiaobao. It was the first time he knew that his nickname sounded so good. He couldn't help but murmur, Xiaobao, why was it so disgusting and pretentious? Yuan Xian's eyebrows twitched. He felt that he was bewitched. He flung his sleeves angrily and then stepped on the stairs to the main hall. The head eunuch rushed over. His face was covered in cold sweat, and he was so scared that his legs were trembling. Your Majesty, this servant has finally found you. You scared this servant to death. Suddenly, he disappeared. There were so many people at the palace banquet. What should he do if something happened? He even called the guards away. Was he trying to scare people to death? If something happened to the little emperor, they would all lose their heads. Yuan Xian coldly said, Get lost. Is Lu Xinglan here? The head eunuch immediately said, Yes, she is in the main hall. She is preparing to meet you with the civil and military officials. Yuan Xian said, He knows his manners. These words were said in a cold and murderous tone. The head eunuch was shocked. Your Majesty, you must be patient. The assassination attempt earlier had already infuriated Lu Xinglan. What if Lu Xinglan had the thought of rebelling against him again? In the end, wasn't Lu Xinglan the person that the southern nation was relying on? Without him, the northern Qi army would not be able to hold on. More than half of the generals in the imperial court wanted to rebel. The head eunuch wiped his sweat with his hand. He really didn't know how to persuade him. Yuan Xian smiled coldly. We know what to do. If you keep blabbering, I'll cut off your tongue. The eunuch immediately shut his mouth, not daring to speak. When he sat on the throne, he saw the civil and military officials below him bowing and congratulating him on his birthday. The leader was Lu Xinglan. This man stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. That aura made others feel like they were nothing more than chicken feathers. Yuan Xian felt that it was an eyesore. However, he still put on a fake smile. Why aren't you getting up? There's no need for me to salute you. I heard that you've been injured recently. It's best if you don't overwork yourself. Otherwise, your body won't be able to take it. These words were filled with anger. Lu Xinglan's expression was indifferent. His handsome face was devoid of any emotion. He said indifferently, Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. I'm fine. Yuan Xian chuckled. Of course you're fine. If you're not fine, who's going to protect our country? These words simply made everyone shudder with fear and trepidation. It was no longer sarcastic, but a blatant provocation. Lu Xinglan's gaze was steady and unwavering. How can this country be protected by me alone? It's all because of Your Majesty's wisdom that thousands of soldiers are willing to risk their lives for you. // You'll be able to see it the next time you open the bookshelf, if you like. Chapter 28-25. Two people's words. They were mocking each other openly and secretly. They were just short of drawing their swords and slashing each other. The atmosphere of the birthday banquet was bleak and terrifying. Yuan Xian also knew that he couldn't hold back his anger. He gritted his teeth and said, My dear minister, you should take care of yourself. Don't die early. I have a lot of support for you. Lu Xinglan lowered his eyes, but his body was straight and elegant. He said coldly, I'm afraid that I can't live up to Your Majesty's expectations. Could they still have a good chat today? Was he going to throw his cup and draw his sword the next moment? The minister had already taken 3 steps back, afraid that he would be affected. Finally, Yuan Xian forced himself to calm down. All right, it's getting late. Let's start the banquet. The main hall was filled with male ministers. The family members were in the inner hall. They couldn't come here. Yuan Xian could only look at Lu Xinglan, and Lu Xinglan could only look at Yuan Xian. The more they looked, the more impatient they became. Lu Xinglan drank a cup of wine and thought about it. Why was Yuan Xian, this brat, so impatient? Today's arrangement didn't have any intention of making things difficult for him. She didn't expect him to mock her verbally. Yuan Xian wouldn't do anything that didn't benefit him. But mocking him just now, she couldn't think of any benefits. Lu Xinglan swirled the wine in her cup. His incomparably cold eyes were reflected in the wine. Forget it. She meant to eat a few mouthfuls and then go fetch Wei Wei. They went to watch the show. As for Yuan Xian, he could do whatever he wanted. As long as they didn't disturb him, everything would be fine. Yuan Xian was also drinking to drown his sorrows. The eunuch beside him didn't dare to persuade him. He could only ask someone to add water to the wine. He didn't dare to let Yuan Xian drink anything wrong. Yuan Xian was cruel, but the eunuchs in the palace were the most loyal. Without his penis, he could only treat the royal family as his subordinates. He felt that it was natural to be beaten, scolded, and punished. All of them were proud to serve the royal family. They were even more protective of Yuan Xian. This was the duty of a servant. Suddenly, Yuan Xian looked at Lu Xinglan and asked coldly, Where is Lu Xinglan going later? Seeing how perfunctory he was, he wouldn't stay for long. Yet, he brought a female. He had no idea why he had brought her here. She was just a concubine. Wouldn't she be humiliated if she was thrown into the group of women in the inner palace? Could it be that Lu Xinglan thought that Wei Wei was of a lowly status and wanted to defile her like this? Yuan Xian's expression turned much colder. Immediately, he threw the quilt aside. Send the head palace maid over to see who is making things difficult for the womenfolk. Lu Xinglan brought. The head eunuch immediately understood. Your Majesty, are you going to make things difficult for his womenfolk and humiliate him? His Majesty's recent hostility towards Lu Xinglan was too obvious. The Grand Empress Dowager should not have thought of this in such a short time. When Yuan Xian heard this, he looked coldly at this slave. For a moment, the great eunuch felt the stare of death. Then he automatically turned around and lay down. Yuan Xian kicked his butt and coldly said, "Just go when I tell you to go. Have the head palace maid follow her at all times. Whoever makes things difficult for her is to be put on my list and wait for me to deal with them." The head eunuch was confused. What was going on? He was clearly fighting to the death with Lu Xinglan. Why did he turn around and take care of his womenfolk? Could it be that His Majesty knew that he had to endure the humiliation but couldn't bring himself to do it? He could only compensate Lu Xinglan's womenfolk to maintain a good relationship with her. The head eunuch felt a headache coming on. He didn't know what these big shots were thinking. Of course, he also needed to know. If he knew too much, he would be beheaded. Slash. Chapter 28-26. Lu Xinglan was paying attention to Yuan Xian's movements, but he didn't know why he sent the head eunuch out. It didn't matter what he did. He knew the layout of the palace, the timing of the guard change, and the situation. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Yuan Xian didn't make any arrangements today. It was purely to annoy him. Lu Xinglan was in a good mood, so he didn't mind. Seeing that it was about time, he got up and bid farewell. Yuan Xian looked at him coldly, then snorted eerily. "Take care, my dear minister." Lu Xinglan revealed a rare smile. "It's lively outside the palace. I'll go take a walk with my wife. If your majesty wants to play, I can be your majesty's guard." He was actually just saying it casually. People had to be polite. It was just a matter of pleasantries. Who would take it seriously? How could Yuan Xian go out with him? He was afraid of him, and he was also wary of him. Follow him out. Yuan Xian was most afraid that he would kill him in a place where no one was around. Lu Xinglan finished speaking and was about to leave, but he saw a trace of intense struggle on Yuan Xian's face. Lu Xinglan's expression was strange. Why was he struggling? Yuan Xian fidgeted for a while. Lu Xinglan looked at him strangely. This behavior. Then Yuan Xian raised his chin and snorted. "Since my dear minister is so enthusiastic," then he hesitated for a moment. Lu Xinglan already saw it. He was about to slip away and pretend that he didn't hear him. But Yuan Xian had already gotten up and ran faster than him. "Then I'll reluctantly let you follow me." Lu Xinglan, can you be more shameless? Can't you understand polite words? It was like asking a guest to leave and asking him to stay for a meal. Why are you leaving? Why don't you stay and have a meal together? There's food to eat. Fine, I won't leave. Scram, eat your head. Lu Xinglan's expression darkened, and he immediately followed him. It was rare that he was going to watch a show with Wei Wei. Why did he have to squeeze with Yuan Xian? Wasn't Yuan Xian afraid that he would kill him and rebel? Why wasn't he afraid now? Was Yuan Xian sure that he wouldn't rebel? Lu Xinglan's handsome face darkened. One by one, the emperor and his minister went to the inner hall to look for her. Because Lu Xinglan walked quickly, she didn't pay much attention to Yuan Xian's path. He thought that Yuan Xian was just following him. In the inner hall, Wei Wei Bai was eating. This dish is pretty good. He had never heard of such sarcastic discussions. General Lu's concubine? Aya, it's nothing special. It's very ugly. Wei Wei Bai paused in her actions and narrowed her eyes. Then, she slowly raised her head and saw a woman wearing a head full of gold hairpins. She was dressed like a turkey and was laughing and talking about her. Look at her beady eyes and round face. How could she tempt General Lu? Wei Wei Bai put down her chopsticks. He said to the system, "Who is this?" The system said, "Princess, I think." Like the wife of Yuan Xian's Little Cannon Fodder clan's royal uncle or something. In terms of seniority, he was quite high. Wei Wei Bai said, "She said I'm ugly." The system thought for a while. No, beady eyes and round face. Isn't that an objective evaluation? Wei Wei Bai, the system reacted. No, your eyes are very beautiful. They are authentic walnut eyes. How is your face like a round face? It's much prettier than a round face. This was a compliment. One had to compliment someone who didn't know how. Are you a spy sent by the enemy? Wei Wei Bai's original intention to kill the princess was ruined by the system. She felt that the system was more detestable. Forget it. Wei Wei Bai continued to eat. Who asked her to be a Buddhist? If she was hot-blooded in the past, she would have cornered the princess and beat her until she couldn't take care of herself. Just as she was thinking about that, a palace maid who was standing in the dark walked out. Without hesitation, she picked up a cup of water and splashed it on the princess's face. The princess was furious. The palace maid bowed. Your servant was sent by His Majesty. The weather is hot, so I'm here to wash the princess's face. The princess almost couldn't swallow her anger, but she didn't dare to speak. Who didn't know about Yuan Xian's brutal reputation? It wasn't surprising that he did anything. But why did he suddenly target her? What did she do? Before she could figure it out, all the palace maids in the hall knelt down and bowed at the same time. Long live His Majesty. The princess trembled as she saw Yuan Xian walk in with a dark face. And the person behind him was actually Lu Xinglan. When the two men walked in, their imposing manner made the inner hall seem dull and dull. Wei Wei Bai had just eaten, so her reaction was a little slow. Before she could get up, she saw everyone kneeling. She looked up. Yuan Xian, that bastard. And Lu Xinglan, that bastard. She also wanted to get up, but her expression was a little blank. But she saw Yuan Xian walk over and say to her, "Let's go out and play." Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely, then looked at the people kneeling in the hall. Yuan Xian then realized that his identity had been exposed. He felt a little guilty, so he lowered his hands and said carefully, "They're just playing. It's very lively outside. There are juggles and plays and all kinds of shops and stalls. Later, there will be lantern dances and fireworks." Wei Wei Bai stared at him for a while, then smiled. "It's very lively." Yuan Xian immediately smiled happily. And Lu Xinglan, who was a few steps behind, saw this scene and felt that something was wrong, especially when it was possible that Bai Wei Wei would laugh along. He kept feeling that something was wrong. Chapter 28-27. The circus troupe was unusually lively. There were all kinds of fire-breathing, stilts, and people-stack people. Wei Wei Bai rarely went out. She carried a little rabbit lantern in her hand and walked with Lu Xinglan. Yuan Xian swaggered in front. Just now, the two men had already given in to each other. "Your Majesty, this subject and my wife are of low status. How dare we walk side by side with your Majesty?" Lu Xinglan pulled Wei Wei Bai behind her unhurriedly. Then, she bowed politely, but her eyes were staring coldly at Yuan Xian. She didn't have any self-awareness of her low status at all. Yuan Xian smiled perfunctorily. "Oh, I see that my beloved subject likes to ride to my bedroom on horseback. I thought that my beloved subject is used to ignoring the rules." "Lu Xinglan, this subject will change now. Please walk in front." Yuan Xian still wanted to mock her, but he saw Wei Wei Bai timidly looking at him from behind Lu Xinglan. The corners of the girl's eyes were slightly pink, like the delicate beauty of peach blossoms. Under the light, she was soft and beautiful. He choked for a moment. Then, Yuan Xian walked in front, followed by Lu Xinglan and Wei Wei Bai. The three of them were surrounded by a strange, calm atmosphere. On the contrary, Wei Wei Bai was more relaxed. After all, she came out to play. She didn't want to think about the mission. Lu Xinglan and Yuan Xian were background to her. They weren't as good-looking as the circus that spat out fireballs. She saw a monkey circus and couldn't help but take a few steps forward, but her wrist was grabbed. Wei Wei Bai looked up. Under the bright yellow light, the man glanced indifferently at the circus monkeys. Then, he unhurriedly lowered his eyes and said calmly, "The living things are restless. Don't come closer." Wei Wei Bai chuckled and then took 2 steps back. Lu Xinglan followed and calmly took 2 steps back. She only took a few glances at the monkeys, then carried the rabbit lantern and continued to walk forward. Yuan Xian stretched his ears and didn't turn back to listen to the movements behind him. After making sure that the people behind him were following him, he swaggered forward. Lu Xinglan didn't say anything. She just glanced sideways at the girl beside her and saw that her cheeks were a little flushed. His face also heated up, and his pursed lips curled up slightly. His fingers slowly trailed down her wrist and finally held her soft fingers. Their loose sleeves were next to each other. Under the light, one could occasionally see the gaps between their sleeves. Their fingers were tightly intertwined. Yuan Xian had not left the palace to celebrate with the people for a long time. It was rare for him to come out, and he was with Lu Xinglan, the person he hated the most. However, his mood had nothing to do with annoyance. Instead, it was occupied by another emotion. He was a little nervous. There was also some apprehension. He was even excited. He walked with his hands behind his back, listening to the footsteps behind him. Lu Xinglan's footsteps were unusually light, because of his high level of martial arts. Wei Wei Bai's footsteps were also light, because she was petite. He tried hard to identify the footsteps, but he was still unable to determine which one belonged to her. He was afraid that the person behind him would get tired from walking too fast, so he slowed down his pace. However, due to his status, he didn't dare to look behind him openly. After all, his status was noble. It was not appropriate for him to look at other people's wives so blatantly. Yuan Xian narrowed his eyes, but he really wanted to take a look. Should he take a peek? Coincidentally, there was a bustling opera troupe in front of them. It seemed that the stage hadn't been set up yet. This group of performers were talking and laughing as they went to buy things. Yuan Xian hated the smell of these people's cosmetics and wanted to move away. However, he paused, thinking that if he turned around in the crowd, it wouldn't be too abrupt. Slash. Chapter 28:28. So he didn't dodge. Instead, he deliberately went forward. The crowd rushed over, and Yuan Xian took the opportunity to turn around. The sound of a knife scraping through cloth came from beside his ear. He was greedy for pleasure. Although he didn't like Lu Xinglan since he was young and practiced some martial arts, it was just fancy moves. However, years of experience of being assassinated allowed him to distinguish the sound of a knife in the wind. He almost instinctively took 2 steps back. Then he saw a scene that scared him out of his wits. In the crowd, a Hua Dan took out a short knife from his sleeve and stabbed straight at his chest. Yuan Xian's face was pale. He thought he was going to die. The next moment, Lu Xinglan had already appeared beside him. Her fingers easily reached over and snatched the knife from Hua Dan's hand. Then she stabbed him back. Just as Hua Dan was about to scream, Lu Xinglan had already taken a handkerchief from Hua Dan's waist and stuffed it into his mouth. The opera robe was unusually wide, and there were no traces of blood. When Hua Dan lay down, he died quietly. It almost didn't cause any commotion. Lu Xinglan didn't want the girl behind her to see such a bloody scene. Although Yuan Xian's face was pale, he didn't dodge. Instead, he deliberately blocked this scene. The two of them thought that it was over. The people who were singing suddenly turned around, pulled out their short knives, and rushed toward Yuan Xian. Lu Xinglan's expression was calm, and her eyes quickly looked back. Seeing that Wei Wei Bai had already retreated to the darkness in front, she didn't leave with a worried expression, but she didn't risk death to come forward. She heaved a sigh of relief, then turned around and grabbed a short knife from a person and pushed Yuan Xian out of the encirclement. "Let's go, Your Majesty." Yuan Xian came out with her. If he died, he was going to rebel. After all, the emperor was dead, and his life was the greatest rebellion. It was too troublesome to rebel. It was better to save Yuan Xian and let him continue to suffer on the throne. All kinds of thoughts flashed through Lu Xinglan's mind. In the end, she let Yuan Xian go first. She thought that Yuan Xian would run away directly because this guy was very afraid of death. And Wei Wei Bai didn't go forward. The guards who were following from afar had already rushed over. He was in time to protect her. Lu Xinglan stopped all the assassins and was about to make a move. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He turned around abruptly, but did not see Wei Wei Bai. Yuan Xian was also gone. They disappeared together? Lu Xinglan stabbed a few assassins to death. She was still pondering whether Yuan Xian had suddenly become kind and knew to take others with him. Of course, this was just a fleeting thought. Yuan Xian had a grudge against him. She was always thinking about his death. Even if he was being kind, it wouldn't be sent to him either. After all, Wei Wei Bai was his wife, but he took her and ran away. Lu Xinglan finally killed all the assassins. Amidst the screaming crowd on the street, the man stood under the light of the lantern. His exquisite face was hidden against the light, and his black eyes were unusually deep. He suddenly started walking forward. The shadow cast on half of his face made him look cold and gloomy. He finally realized that something was wrong. Yuan Xian's entire line of sight tonight was focused on by Wei Wei. Occasionally, he would not look at her, but it seemed more like he was guilty. What was he guilty of? No, it was not guilty. It was shyness. Lu Xinglan's face was finally exposed to the light. A trace of ruthlessness appeared in his dark eyes. He actually took his wife and ran away. Wei Weibai was also dumbfounded. She was watching the show. Assassins came? So be it. It did not affect the show. Slash. Chapter 28-29. However, Yuan Xian turned around and ran, leaving Lu Xinglan to deal with the enemy alone. Bai Weiwei was in a good mood when she saw it. She quickly looked at the side mission. Side mission progress, 0. 0 my ass. Yuan Xian ran away when there was an assassin, leaving Lu Xinglan to deal with it alone. How could Lu Xinglan not be angry at such a cowardly bastard who treated other people's lives like ants? Did he not want to remove Yuan Xian from the throne? Calling Lu Xinglan a tortoise was still polite. This was an old tortoise. He was too good at enduring. Wei Weibai was speechless. She was about to bring the rabbit lantern to Lu Xinglan to cause some trouble. Yuan Xian was halfway there when he suddenly thought of something. He hesitated for 3 seconds, turned around abruptly, and ran towards her. The pale-faced youth rushed over without hesitation, wanting to hold her hand. Wei Weibai took a step back. He only grabbed her sleeve. Yuan Xian pursed his lips and did not say anything. He just firmly pulled her sleeve and ran towards the palace. Wei Weibai blinked and said to the system, "Yo, it's getting cold recently. Give Lu Xinglan a hat and let him experience my virtuous and beautiful heart." Okay? The system was speechless. It was silent for a while before saying, "This. I think the green is a bit glaring." It was a good picture of a long-lasting relationship. Let's just focus on our strategy and stop making trouble. If we do something like vomiting blood again, it won't be easy to end it. Wei Weibai nodded. I think so too, so I made the color darker. Dark green looks better. A little green is not enough. A little more and it'll be dark green. System, Wei Weibai said faintly. Aren't all turtles green? He likes to be a turtle so much. Let him be. System, what the host said made sense. You should just eat properly. The recent dinner was so luxurious that it took a lot of effort to finish it. Yuan Xian was so nervous that his whole body trembled. He grabbed the girl's soft sleeve, his fingertips also trembling. It did not seem like fear. Instead, it was more like uncontrollable excitement. He caught her, although it was just a sleeve. When he finally saw the guards, he did not reprimand the soldiers who were too far away. Instead, he turned to look at Wei Weibai. The girl behind him seemed to be in a hurry. She was a little out of breath, and her face was a little red. Her eyes were filled with bewilderment and worry. She didn't care about anything else and turned back to look at the street in front of her. Lu Xinglan was facing an enemy on the street. Yuan Xian said unhappily, "His martial arts are high. He won't die. Don't go over and cause trouble." After saying that, he realized that his tone was too condescending. He was very impolite. He shut his mouth in embarrassment. However, he saw Wei Weibai turn around worriedly. "Hubby, are you really okay?" Yuan Xian's heartbeat quickened. He lowered his head and said, "Yes, I'm fine." He couldn't hurt Lu Xinglan's martial arts, even if he used the most powerful shadow assassin in the inner palace. Last time, the ambush that used arrows to assassinate was almost a sure kill array. It was still easily broken by him. He killed Lu Xinglan until he was in despair. How could those mere assassins possibly do any harm to Lu Xinglan? Moreover, those assassins were targeting him. Of course, he was inferior. He was much easier to kill than Lu Xinglan. Thinking of this, the young emperor's arrogant and inferior mentality became a little twisted. There was a hint of grief and anger in the twist. In any case, Lu Xinglan was the stronger one. He was puzzled. Why didn't Lu Xinglan rebel? Chapter 28:30. He was so sullen, sitting on the throne. He might as well not sit, and let Lu Xinglan sit by herself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so indignant. After he sat at the highest point, he endured the greatest pressure and the loneliest life. But he still couldn't get the supreme power and reward. Lu Xinglan got all the benefits of this lousy position. He was only left with that loneliness. What did he want to do here? Yuan Xian's expression was gloomy and irritable. The few guards beside him immediately trembled. They knew that Yuan Xian was about to explode again. He was often like this. Once his emotions exploded, he wouldn't stop until he killed a few people around him. Suddenly, his fingers tightened, but he saw the girl in front of him lift her sleeve. Then, he realized that he was grabbing her clothes. The violence in the young man's eyes lessened, and even became a little unnatural. He wanted to let go of his fingers, but he thought, why should he let go? The sleeve he was grabbing was his. So Yuan Xian grabbed even harder. Wei Bai didn't care that her sleeve was being grabbed. The worry between her brows didn't fade, but increased. What's wrong with you? She whispered softly, her voice soft and urgent. Yuan Xian pursed his lips. His eyes were a little red, and he didn't say a word. Wei Bai took a step forward, but felt that it wasn't good to be too close, so she took 2 steps back. But she saw the young man in front of her suddenly take a step forward. When she stepped back, he moved forward. The result of retreating was that Wei directly hit the wall. Yuan Xian definitely wouldn't do such a thing normally. But he was in a special period now. His entire person was surrounded by violent emotions, and he was much bolder. His moral bottom line had been completely exposed. He smiled coldly. If you're so worried about him, why don't you die together with him? They all liked Lu Xinglan. Everyone liked him. He was a piece of gold. Many noble people would be moved when they saw him. In this world, except for the people of the north, he probably hated Lu Xinglan the most. Wei Bai seemed to be a little surprised that he said such words. She moved her lips, and her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. Her gentle eyes lowered slightly. The sorrowful girl did not have much of an expression on her face, but made one's heart ache when they saw it. Yuan Xian's insulting words came to a halt. He opened his mouth again and stuttered, Don't worry. If you can't die, you can't die. You don't have to die for love. He might as well not have comforted her at all. Sure enough, he saw her. She didn't say a word. She pursed her lips and looked at him coldly. It was rare for the little emperor to treat someone well, but he knew that he had messed up again. His emotions were unstable, and he would often explode. This was the first time he had erupted with such regret and fear. Obviously, he didn't want to scare her. Wei Bai looked at him indifferently and gently opened her eyes. Her eyes were red, and her voice was weak. My husband is a loyal person. I hope your majesty doesn't hate him so much. Sure enough, he saw through it. He hated Lu Xinglan. In the beginning, he was unwilling to reveal his identity because everyone knew. Lu Xinglan was not on good terms with him. She was Lu Xinglan's woman, so how could she not know? Yuan Xian gripped her sleeves tightly. He took another step forward, and his shadow loomed over her. It almost covered her under his shadow. His voice was low. I hate Lu Xinglan, but I don't hate you. This word hadn't been said yet, but he felt a chill on his back. Yuan Xian turned around and saw that Lu Xinglan was already standing not far away. The man's eyes were dark, and his slender figure was as sharp as a sharp blade. His face, hidden in the darkness, was pale and exquisite, but there was a cold glint of gloominess. Finally, Lu Xinglan slowly revealed a smile. Your Majesty, you are very warm to my wife. Chapter 28:31. Under the countless lights, Lu Xinglan's thin lips curved slightly, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Instead, his face that was exposed under the candlelight looked even colder. Yuan Xian was still holding onto Wei Bai's sleeve, forcing her to lean against the wall. It was the pose of a hooligan flirting with an innocent woman. The little emperor was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Lu Xinglan to come back so quickly. He pursed his lips, then reluctantly let go of Wei Wei Bai's sleeve. That hesitation, it made Lu Xinglan's eyes even colder and fiercer. Wei Wei Bai quickly retracted her sleeve and even shook it, showing that she was not close to the little emperor. Then she squeezed her tears, sobbed, turned around, and ran to Lu Xinglan's side, holding onto his sleeve with both hands. "Young master, you scare me to death." Her watery eyes were hazy, looking at him with grievance and worry. Her fingers could not help but tug at his sleeve, shaking it. Lu Xinglan was expressionless. His eyes were still dark and cold. He stared at Yuan Xian for a while. Then slowly his eyes fell on Wei Wei Bai. He stared at her for a long time without saying a word. The atmosphere was very heavy. "System, are you going to do the splits?" In front of the male lead, he flirted with another poor girl. Although he did not show it, he still showed his scumbag nature. Wei Wei Bai was indifferent. "I can't do the splits. I've always been flexible." And when did she flirt with others? She was innocent from the beginning to the end. She was ignorant, pure, innocent, and cute. The system silently vomited. It was immune to its host's narcissism. It vomited because it ate too much. The girl's eyes were full of worry and a trace of helpless fear. She pursed her lips, tears rolling in her eyes, but did not fall, as if she was afraid of causing trouble for him. Lu Xinglan's heart softened for a moment. He reached out and gently hooked her fingers that were pinching his sleeve. Lu Xinglan's expression was still indifferent and cold. He raised his eyes to look at Yuan Xian. "Your Majesty, it seems that it is not suitable for you to leave the palace. There are a lot of people outside who want to kill you. It is not safe for you to go out." Yuan Xian also curled his lips coldly. "It's not safe for me to go out. Don't I still have my beloved minister to protect me?" Lu Xinglan stared at him indifferently for a while. Her eyes were extremely cold. Then, he finally sneered. "Your Majesty, how do you know that I am not one of the people who killed you?" These words were truly heartrending. Yuan Xian's expression changed as all the blood drained from his face. He pursed his lips and wanted to explode, but he couldn't help but look at the person beside Lu Xinglan. Lu Xinglan noticed the look in his eyes. Since when did the extremely brutal Yuan Xian need to look at whose expression when he wanted to lose his temper? This cruel little incapable ruler. He actually cared about the thoughts of another person? Lu Xinglan looked at him coldly. Yuan Xian glared back coldly and put on a fake smile. "Looks like my beloved minister is quite humorous." On the way back, the atmosphere was heavy with a surge of killing intent. The palace gates were wide open. The head eunuch led the palace maids and eunuchs to wait for them. Yuan Xian was walking forward when he suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned back. He saw Lu Xinglan holding Wei Wei Bai's hand. His footsteps were slow and light, deliberately accommodating to Wei Wei Bai's speed. Under the sparkling moonlight, the girl's face was exceptionally beautiful and soft. Her eyes were gentle as she raised her chin and looked at the man beside her with admiration. Yuan Xian's eyes turned red. He couldn't hold his breath and felt extremely uncomfortable. Then, he flung his sleeves and walked directly into the palace. The palace gates closed slowly. Lu Xinglan bowed calmly outside the palace gates. The comma. Chapter 2832. In the gap of the palace door, Yuan Xian turned around and faced the door sideways until the gap of the door separated the girl beside Lu Xinglan. Only then did the malice in his eyes appear. Lu Xinglan, who was standing straight outside, also slowly looked up. His eyes were cold and ruthless. The door closed with a bang. Lu Xinglan then turned around and pulled Wei Wei Bai forward. His fingers were a little forceful. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but want to withdraw her hand. However, she realized that the man suddenly pursed his thin lips and his eyes were as dark as ink. He lowered his head and glanced at her indifferently. Suddenly, his fingers loosened and completely left her hand. Wei Wei Bai, ? The moment his fingers left her fingertips, he reacted quickly and tugged at her sleeve. Her sleeves instantly tightened. Wei Wei Bai blinked and looked at him in confusion. However, she realized that Lu Xinglan suddenly took a step forward and was too close. She couldn't help but take a step back. It was like a chain reaction. He pressed on step by step, and she retreated helplessly. Suddenly, her back bumped into something. It was a dark corner, a red round pillar under a long corridor. The lantern beside it was emitting a faint cold light. It fell into the man's dark eyes and brought a hint of cold luster. Just now, his voice was faint and suppressed. How do you feel when he grabs you like this? Wei Wei Bai was forced to lean against the pillar. The man's aura was strong and cold. He was rarely so sharp and scary when he was with her. It was more like a weapon in a scabbard with a faint sandalwood fragrance, making people forget that he came from a place of wind and snow. It was full of sharpened ruthlessness. At this moment, the man had such ruthlessness. His eyes were cold and deep as he lowered his head and stared at her. It was as if as long as she revealed a trace of something wrong, it was as if he could cut her. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Instead, she quietly raised her head and met his gaze. This wasn't a confrontation. It was confusion. There was a trace of confusion in her eyes, and the corners of her eyes were red. Her fair face was like a pond lotus in the dark night. She was slender and elegant, with a fragrance that could easily attract people's attention. She was so beautiful, even though she was standing in the palace. It was also exceptionally outstanding. It was no wonder that the little fatuous ruler would be moved. Others might not know, but Lu Xinglan did. The little fatuous prince was muddle-headed in other areas. Moreover, he was always ready to go against him, and always used all sorts of absurd reasons to deduct his military funds. However, he had never truly indulged in debauchery. The little fatuous prince was not very interested in women. He's ambitious and doesn't like women. He's wholeheartedly fighting with him for the right to rule the country. It was unknown whether he had ever touched those women in the harem. That was why her heart sank when she realized that Yuan Xian's feelings for her were not normal. After all, for a woman, it was the harem, the throne, and the emperor. He would be more attractive than the other one. Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely for a while, then looked at her sleeves. They were pulled so tightly that it was difficult for her to break free. Lu Xinglan was still motionless, wrestling with him like this. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips, the confusion in her eyes fading away bit by bit, like the clouds parting to see the moon. She thought of something, and the corners of her eyes curved. The young girl's eyes were charming when she didn't deliberately seduce people. She deliberately looked up. It was even more seductive. Like a delicate flower blooming, the young girl took a small step forward, her soft and fragrant body moving forward. She reached out and carefully hugged his waist. The young girl was petite. Blocked in front of the pillar, the man's slender figure enveloped her. Not far from them was the brightly lit street. Slash. Chapter 28:33. She seemed to feel that she was too bold, but she still overcame this feeling of shyness and leaned her face against his firm chest. Lu Xinglan's body stiffened. He also didn't expect her to suddenly take the initiative, and it was in public. Even if he blocked her body, it was an extremely difficult thing for a girl to do. Wei Wei Bai was like a lazy cat. Her cheek rubbed against his chest, feeling the man's sudden tremble. She whispered, "Lu Xinglan, are you jealous?" Lu Xinglan's lips tightened. He didn't say anything, but there was already a broken light in his eyes. It wasn't as sharp and cold as before. Wei Wei Bai looked up. There was a smile in her eyes. It was broken, as pure and beautiful as the moonlight. Lu Xinglan felt that his emotions were all seen through by this pair of eyes, including his clumsy attempt to cover up his feelings. His face turned red from embarrassment. He was still silent. The smile in Wei Wei Bai's eyes became more obvious. She slowly tiptoed. "You're asking me how I feel? I don't feel anything." Her lips came to his jaw. The man's jawline was very good. The perfect outline of his face had a sharp and exquisite beauty. In the shadows, he looked especially delicate and elegant. His appearance was more like that of a refined scholar, not a boorish military general. The The girl's kiss was too light. It was like a light breeze, with the fragrance of flowers. Her fingers were tight as she hugged his waist. Then she buried her face in his arms. Her voice was low and soft. Lu Xinglan, the one I like is you. I don't have any feelings for anyone else. The man didn't say anything, just when Wei Wei Bai thought that she didn't work hard enough, causing the favorability to stagnate. The man's fingers gently pinched her chin, making her look up. The man's thin and cold lips were already on her lips. The soft breath, the man's sandalwood. In the dark corner, under the swaying light of the lantern. It was like a beautiful dream. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 88. When she attended the birthday banquet, she rode a horse and rode a carriage alone. When they returned, they held hands and walked home under the moonlight. After returning home, the two of them washed up separately. Only then did he go to bed. Wei Wei Bai curled up in Lu Xinglan's arms and closed her eyes with a gentle expression. Then he excitedly said to the system, Lu Xinglan, that little bastard, must be thinking of rebelling. Her favorable impression of him was so high. Moreover, Yuan Xian had also revealed his true colors, a green hat wholesaler. Lu Xinglan knew what Yuan Xian was thinking. She definitely wanted to strangle him to death. The system replied, yes, when that bastard grabbed your sleeve, the rebellion index jumped from 0 to 60. 60 was jumping back and forth on the edge of rebellion, an index that could jump down at any moment. A little more provocation, and they would definitely rebel. Wei Wei Bai showed a gratified smile and was about to praise herself. The system continued, and when you hugged and kissed him, the rebellion index went back to 0. Wei Wei Bai, the system continued, and it made the male lead even more determined to live in seclusion in the countryside. Wei Wei Bai's mouth twitched. Her mind was a little confused. Wouldn't a normal man be angry for a woman? Someone was already coveting your woman and was planning to take her. A normal man would pick up a stool and beat someone to death. Why did he want to live in seclusion in the countryside? Shouldn't it be that I want to kill 100 flowers after blooming? Am I going to rebel? Slash. Chapter 2834. Damn, Lu Xinglan was indeed not a normal man. He was a tortoise. The system was still analyzing. Maybe the male lead felt that since the emperor likes you and you like him, he took you away. It was an exceptionally carefree and beautiful thing. Wei Wei Bai said calmly, don't say any more. I'll take a break. After taking a break, only then did she hear the host's eerie voice. I saw that green grassland. On the grassland, there was a group of tortoises knitting hats. Why was she singing? The system was depressed. It had picked up the bird's nest soup and drank it slowly. It had eaten too much recently, so it drank something light. The days passed unhurriedly. After the birthday banquet, Lu Xinglan was busy for a few days. It seemed that her official duties had increased, and she often had to go out to socialize. Because of the matter with Yuan Xian, Lu Xinglan was also very cautious about the timing of her trips. And recently, the northern countries seemed to be ready to make trouble again. Lu Xinglan flipped through the reports of the northern countries' movements at the border every day. And in the palace, Yuan Xian was impatiently listening to Yuan's complaints. Tell me what's wrong with me. I heard that last time at your birthday banquet, Xinglan brought that bitch to attend, right? And he kept protecting her. The matter of Lu Xinglan falling in love with a concubine, it had already spread throughout the capital. Who didn't know that General Lu, who had never been moved in 10,000 years and hated women, he was now infatuated. Yuan Xian's brows were tightly knitted. When he heard the word bitch, his eyes turned violent. But Yuanda was unforgiving. I killed that bitch. Brother, you have to help me. She was just a half-sister. Yuan Xian didn't like her to begin with. With this provocation, he immediately exploded. He picked up a pen holder in front of him and smashed it hard on Yuanda's head. Yuanda was smashed to the ground, his head full of blood. She screamed in disbelief. Brother, how can you do this to me? Yuan Xian said gloomily, don't mention Lu Xinglan in front of me, and you're not allowed to talk about her. Her or him. Yuanda wasn't stupid and reacted in time. This she was not the same as Lu Xinglan's he. It was Wei Wei Bai. She looked at him in disbelief for a while. Suddenly, her whole body began to tremble. Yuanda laughed wildly. He pointed at Yuan Xian and said loudly, "Didn't you have a weak body? Why are you interested in women?" No one knew about this. Lu Xinglan didn't know either. After all, it was a scandal of the royal family, and Yuan Xian was the only legitimate prince, the rightful heir to the throne. Even if some of the older officials knew about it, they still kept it a secret. Yuanda only found out by accident. Yuan Xian's face darkened as killing intent surged in his eyes. He was about to kill Yuanda. The bloodied Yuanda suddenly crawled forward with a sinister smile. "Royal brother, you like that bitch and I like Xinglan. How about we join hands and lock them up?" Yuan Xian paused. Yuanda smiled even more happily. She wasn't normal. She knew it. This crazy and decadent royal family had done all sorts of dirty things. No one who grew up in this place was normal. Yuan Xian was the same. She was just as crazy as him. Yuanda laughed bitterly. "Since we can't get what we love, why do we need them to be willing? Just lock them up. Even if we can't get their hearts, we still need them." Yuan Xian was silent. Yuanda cried pitifully again. "This is the last way. When we catch the two of them, you'll share the Bai one, and I'll share Xinglan. How fair is that?" Yuan Xian sneered. "You're crazy. For Lu Xinglan, you're neither human nor ghost." Yuanda wiped the blood off his face. He looked ferocious and sad. "Yes, I'm crazy. What about you?" Yuan Xian looked at her coldly and suddenly said, "I'm tired. Get lost." Yuanda staggered to his feet and walked out. As he walked, he laughed again, because she knew Yuan Xian agreed. On Wei Wei Bai's side, she was embroidering a turtle. It was a handkerchief for Lu Xinglan. As she was embroidering, she listened to the live broadcast of the situation in the palace. The system said, "These two are perverts. They want to cuckold both of you at the same time. They want to share one with each of them. Do they think the male lead and the host are human?" Wei Wei Bai looked at the rebellion index of 0 with resentment. "Let's split them," she said as she embroidered. The system was confused. "Split what?" Wei Wei Bai said. "Lu Xinglan, that bastard, will share with the ugly princess. I'll share with Yuan Xian, that bastard." The system looked at the host who had given up and asked, "If both of you get a share, what does the male lead get?" Wei Wei Bai said, "What else?" She laughed softly. "Let's split the cuckold. If he didn't rebel, she might as well give him the Green Turtle Award. / to make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click the button." Chapter 2835. It was late at night again. Lu Xinglan sat on the chair with a cold expression. Xian Wu was organizing the map he drew. Lu Xinglan looked at him indifferently, then turned to look at the moon outside the window. She was probably asleep. The candlelight in the study had been lit all night for half a month. The North had already raided the border of the South 3 times. Each time, they were beaten back by the army he trained. And he was in the capital, handling letters every day and sending all the plans to the border. The map was more than half of the North's terrain. Lu Xinglan had been collecting all the terrain information of the North since a long time ago. He also planted countless spies in the North, spies in the North's royal family. Lu Xinglan's confidants were all clear. Lu Xinglan's goal was to completely conquer the North. With the destruction of the North, he would usher in 100 years of stability in the South. This wish was the wish of many generations of the Lu family. Lu Xinglan had also had this wish since he was young, but ever since he met the person he liked, his thoughts were more about living a peaceful life with her. After all, once the war started in the North, he would have to leave this place. He would go to the border and start the Northern Expedition. How could Lu Xinglan bear to take Wei Wei Bai with him? The snow at the border of the North was too cold, and the wind was too strong. She was a delicate southern woman who grew up in the stable capital. Even though she suffered a little when she was a slave, she didn't suffer more because she had a good life. Or instead, she was sent to his side and finally accepted his protection. So in Lu Xinglan's eyes, he looked at Wei Wei Bai as if he was looking at a white and soft dumpling. He couldn't bear to pinch her, afraid that he would hurt her. He cherished her so much. How could he let her go out with him to suffer? Moreover, there were almost no flowers at the border of the north. There was only snow and some plants that were persevering in the snow. They were all bare and dark. They didn't look good at all. Lu Xinglan pursed his lips and stared at the candlelight. Xin Wu said slowly, "Think about it before you make a decision. The North's probing this time was just to see if they could take advantage of you when you weren't around. After all, they were scared by Lu Xinglan. He was also crippled. Now, they had to offer a large sum of money to the Southern Empire every year for peace and stability. If this went on for too long, the Northland would definitely not be able to take it, because the Northland was currently poor. Silver was their life, and Lu Xinglan deliberately made them pay. If a country was short of money, it would not be able to provide for its army. Without an army, they would begin to weaken. If he continued to weaken like this, even if he did not attack him, without any major changes, there was nothing to be afraid of in this country. In these few times, when he was not around, his army was able to beat them to a pulp. In the future, he probably wouldn't dare to probe anymore. They could only sell their pots and pans and take out money to ensure their safety. If it were in the past, Lu Xinglan wouldn't have waited so leisurely and let Northland go bankrupt. Instead, they would reorganize the army and ride into the place where the Southern Empire had a blood feud with them for generations. But now he hesitated. Xin Wu also saw it. It was a path filled with blood and gore. Even someone as strong as Lu Xinglan couldn't guarantee that she would be able to safely destroy the Northern Kingdom without a hitch. He wanted to destroy a country. Even if it was a small country, the resistance it encountered was extremely terrifying. Not to mention the Northern Kingdom, which was still strong even though it was crippled. If this battle continued, who knew how long it would take? Lu Xinglan crossed his hands and supported his chin. His indifferent eyes were deep and dark. Chapter 28:36. He didn't answer Xin Wu. He had drawn those maps one by one over the past few years. Every route on it was planned by him. How to use the fastest and least loss to take over the northern country. He watched as the last map was put away by Xin Wu. He only looked up indifferently and said softly, "Let's wait a little longer." His long-cherished wish of many years. He wouldn't let it go for a while, but he still hesitated. Xin Wu nodded in understanding. Lu Xinglan didn't stay up all night this time. When he returned to his room, it was just before dawn. In the deep darkness, a candlelight was burning faintly. When Lu Xinglan walked in, he saw the needle and thread casually placed on the table. She wasn't good at needlework. The embroidered handkerchief was made of an unknown animal. But in Lu Xinglan's eyes, it was extremely beautiful. He quietly came to the bedside and saw the girl quietly hugging the blanket, sleeping with her eyes lowered. There was no trace of blood on her soft face. This was an unhealthy pale complexion. Lu Xinglan knew that it was the aftereffects of the drug that deprived her of fertility. Her body had been exploited excessively and was a little weaker than ordinary people. It might not be obvious on normal days, but Lu Xinglan reached out and gently landed on her fingertips. Even after sleeping for so long, her slightly cold fingers still didn't have any warmth. He quietly got onto the bed. His warm fingers gently covered her fingers, helping her warm them. Suddenly, she turned over and, like a small animal seeking solace, put her arms around him. Lu Xinglan didn't move. In fact, he was even more careful. He couldn't bear to wake her up. Her long hair fell on his shoulders. The side of her face was leaning against his arm. Her soft breathing was almost inaudible. He could only feel the gentle heat beside his neck. Lu Xinglan pursed his lips, his eyes dark. His fingers gently and slowly landed on her back. He just hugged her like that, waiting for dawn. He had been too conflicted during this period of time, to go to the northern country or not, to sit there and delay the northern country, to drag it out for decades and destroy it, or not to drag it out, to spend a period of time and destroy this place. If it was in the past, he would have already moved. And now, he looked down and saw that Wei Wei Bai was frowning. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. She was drowsy, and her eyes were misty. She rubbed the corners of her eyes sleepily and yawned. Why is it so late again? Lu Xinglan pursed her lips. After a moment of silence, she said softly, some things are hard to decide. The sleepiness in Wei Wei Bai's eyes disappeared. She leaned closer to him, placing her fingers on his chest and her face on his shoulder. She didn't ask him. Nothing was hard to decide. Instead, she just hugged him quietly. Finally, she heard the man's soft sigh above her head. If I leave you for a while, her fingers suddenly pinched the clothes in front of his chest. However, he didn't say anything. Just like that, they continued to fight in silence. His fingers were trembling. Lu Xinglan immediately stopped talking, afraid that she would scare her. After a long time, dawn had arrived. Weak light began to seep through the screen and into the house. Lu Xinglan finally heard the soft and helpless voice of the girl in her arms. Lu Xinglan, don't you want me anymore? These words were almost inaudible, fragile as silk with a hint of panic. Lu Xinglan didn't know why, but the corners of her eyes were dry. The fragility and fear in her words were so obvious. / Chapter 28:37. Lu Xinglan was silent for a while before he reached out to hold the back of her head. She couldn't help but look up. In the dim light, the corners of the girl's eyes were red, and there was a hint of redness on her soft and fair face. She was sad. He stared at her quietly for a while before he sighed and said, I can't bear to leave. As soon as he finished speaking, he lowered his head and kissed her. He couldn't bear to let her hug him and ask him weakly if he didn't want her anymore. He also couldn't bear to let go of the girl who comforted him when he died without a burial. Even if he died, she still guarded his grave and burned incense for him. Thousands of people could bear the responsibility of Northern Nation. He was the only one who could protect her. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 90. Just as Lu Xinglan was about to give up on destroying Northern Nation, and when he adopted the strategy of dragging it down, Xin Wu suddenly received news of a mutiny in the border army. It's a small troop that suddenly betrayed and sold the news to Northern Nation. They led a small troop of more than 50 people to join the Northern Nation army. Lu Xinglan's eyes were cold. How much did we lose? Xin Wu. Because we didn't expect our own people to betray us, about 200 people died. There was no big battle, but so many people died suddenly. It was too much. Lu Xinglan's eyes were cold. He looked down at the list of the dead attached to the news. Why did they suddenly betray us? Xin Wu. The leader was from Northern Nation, but he grew up in Southern Nation. With incomplete information, no one expected him to be a Northern Nation spy. Lu Xinglan listened with a cold expression. Is Northern Nation declaring war on me? His voice was unusually cold. On the contrary, the expression on his face was still gentle. Xin Wu frowned. This is strange. Who gave Northern Nation the confidence to provoke us when they suffered so much? This was a betrayal. Northern Nation had completely shed all pretense of cordiality and was going to confront Lu Xinglan. After being beaten to such a state by Lu Xinglan, anyone with a brain problem would know to rest and recuperate. Lu Xinglan frowned as if thinking about something. He pressed his fingers on the list, and there was a hint of bloodlust in his cold eyes. There was silence. Only then did Lu Xinglan look out of the window. He stared for a long time before saying in a soft and cold voice, Don't be what I think. Yuan Xian isn't that stupid. No matter how much he wanted to kill him, they wouldn't really collude with the Northland royal family to deal with the Southland army. Lu Xinglan sneered. I've watched him grow up. Although he's muddle-headed and casual, he's not that stupid. He was really using the Northlands to attack him. If he won, Yuan Xian wouldn't do anything. He had lost. There was no one in the Northern Kingdom who could stop them, and they directly rode down to the south. Yuan Xian can just wait to be the ruler of a fallen country. Xin Wu tied up the letter written by Lu Xinglan. He was going to deliver the letter himself. At the same time, he could help Lu Xinglan guard the border. This was to prevent too many things from happening and causing trouble. Xin Wu stuffed the map and the letter into a small bag. After carrying it on his back, he said, Whatever decision you want to make, I will support you. Even if you don't leave the capital, I can go to the border and solve the problem. Lu Xinglan sat on the chair and didn't say anything. The man's deep eyes were covered by shadows, carrying a trace of coldness. However, when he looked at Xan Wu, the coldness in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by a trace of hesitation. Xan Wu adjusted his bearing. I'll leave first. Even if you give up protecting the Southland, don't feel burdened. You've done too much for the Southland all these years. So many generations of your family have also sacrificed. Someone has to help you take off the burden. / Chapter 2838. Even if Lu Xinglan gave up protecting the southern nation, who had the right to criticize him? No one. The Lu family had sacrificed for the southern nation until now, and only Lu Xinglan was left alive. How could others have the face to ask him to continue sacrificing? Not to mention that Lu Xinglan had done enough all these years. No one blamed him for whatever decision he made. But Lu Xinglan had not given up protecting the southern nation all these years. Even if the royal family was so muddle-headed and corrupt, he still had not given up on the royal family. And finally, Wei Wei Bai appeared, which made him think of letting go of his heavy burden. Of course, Xan Wu encouraged him. He was glad that there was such a person. She could make Lu Xinglan's life better. When Xan Wu walked out, he saw Wei Wei by holding the hem of her long dress and walking over. When she saw him, she smiled. Xan Wu also smiled, then turned around and disappeared. The system also smiled, then silently took a bite of the super luxurious pork chop. Lu Xinglan sat in the study with the door half open. He turned his face sideways and looked at the messy papers on the table. Some were maps that he had drawn that were not destroyed. Some were pictures of girls that he unconsciously drew when he was tired. He sat in silence for a while. Just as he was about to get up and tidy up the table, he sensed something and turned around. He saw the door open. Wei Wei Bai stood outside the door, the girl's fingers resting lightly on the door. She looked at him with a hint of worry in her eyes. Young master, Lu Xinglan was stunned, then pursed his lips and suppressed the hesitation in his heart. After all, protecting the southern nation and destroying the northern nation. The idea of returning to the border was very tempting to him. But when he saw Wei Wei Bai, this kind of temptation faded away. If he really had to choose, he might choose to stay. The man gently raised his eyes. His indifferent eyes cast a faint shadow like a broken light. He was about to get up when he saw the girl slowly walking over. Then, she squatted down gently and pressed the back of his hand on his leg. He could only sit. Seeing that he put his hands on his legs, the girl looked up and looked at him silently for a long time. Then, she said, I know what you're worried about. Lu Xinglan lowered her eyes and was about to tell him not to worry. However, he saw the young girl silently staring at him. Her sparkling and charming eyes were filled with understanding. It seemed to know what he was thinking. Her fair fingers gently pinched his fingertips. Young master. Her voice was calm and her lips curled up slightly. Go fight at the border. Lu Xinglan pursed her lips and didn't respond. Her dark eyes were incomparably silent. There was a long silence. He finally said in a hoarse voice, If I leave, what will you do? When a young girl heard this, she couldn't help but smile. Her eyes were filled with amazement. Her face gently pressed against the back of his hand. She was like a child acting coquettishly. Of course I'm waiting for you. Lu Xinglan's breathing paused. She felt her heart beating faster and faster. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes and smiled cutely. Young master, you're my hero. You defeated the North, protected the South, and also protected me. She was a citizen of the Southern Empire. He protected the Southern nation. He protected her. Lu Xinglan's eyelashes trembled. He stared at her face that was pressed against the back of his hand. After a long time, she heard him say in a low voice, This is the last time. The young girl raised her eyes in confusion. Her eyes were clear and reflected his handsome face. The man's voice was light and firm. This is the last time I protect the South. He lowered his head slightly and kissed her cheek. Then, I will use the rest of my life to protect you. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 92. Slash. Chapter 2839. Before dawn, the sky was still dark. Lu Xinglan woke up early. He put on his clothes and packed his bag yesterday. The man walked lightly to the wall and took out his long sword. There was also a bow and a quiver. Although the extravagant atmosphere in the capital could make him live a more exquisite life, it could not touch his heart at all. The more extravagant and exquisite his life was, the more cautious he was. The noble of the Southern Kingdom had always been famous for being absurd and fond of pleasure. The best food, the most beautiful clothes, and the most beautiful dances all came from the noble circle of the Southern Kingdom. The royal family did not suppress this atmosphere. It was even worse. Lu Xinglan grew up in the border, which was completely different from the capital. Even though it was summer in the capital, it had already started to snow in the border. The coldness, there was not something the nobles in the capital could imagine. The cruelty and suffering there. The nobles of the Southern Kingdom might not be able to experience it in their entire lives. Iron-blooded armor, cold arrows, and corpses. If he hadn't guarded the border in the Southern Kingdom, the barbarians in the Northern Kingdom who were used to suffering would have been able to crush them with absolute advantage. They would crush all the exquisite and extravagant things into powder. So the more exquisite his life was, the colder his heart was. After packing up everything, the man wore a black suit with narrow sleeves binding his wrists. He carried a bag and a bow on one shoulder, and his long sword was casually placed beside the bed. Then he carefully lifted the bed curtain. He saw Wei Wei Bai's black hair spread out on the pillow, and the fair skin on her back could be vaguely seen under the blanket. There were faint red marks of ambiguity on it. Black hair and white skin. Her sleeping posture was lazy and peaceful. If he was the emperor, he would probably be dragged away from court. Thinking of this, Lu Xinglan's expression changed. He had actually hesitated for a long time, but he still couldn't make up his mind. It was because Yuan Xin coveted his woman. He left, even if there were trusted generals guarding the Lu family. He couldn't guard against the royal family. Lu Xinglan thought of the court. Although he had controlled his power for most of his life. Once he left, who knew what would happen in the next moment when the power of the court was surging? How about Lu Xinglan stared at Wei Wei Bai's sleeping face for a long time. Her face was pale. Even when she was aroused last night, her face was only a light pink. His body couldn't handle it, so he couldn't take her to the border. That place was too torturous. Lu Xinglan was reluctant. He was not used to the extravagant life in the capital, but he thought that if she had been here before. Of course, the more exquisite the better. The more extravagant, the better. The more comfortable, the better. Lu Xinglan thought for a long time with an expressionless face, then sighed. The military officers guarding this place were all trusted aides of the imperial court. More than half of the imperial guards were under his control as well. There shouldn't be any problems. Lu Xinglan sat until the light of dawn began to appear on the horizon. Only then did he slowly get up. The man's long and narrow eyelashes suppressed the dark light in his eyes. He reached out his fair fingertips and lightly touched her hair. Then he lowered his head and kissed her red lips. Soft and cool lips. His kiss warmed her up a little. She seemed to be disturbed. Only then did Lu Xinglan hold her breath and leave her. He didn't want to disturb her. He deliberately made her tired last night, because he thought that she wouldn't have to face his farewell today. Otherwise, he would see her reluctant eyes. He would waver again. Lu Xinglan reached out and gently took the long sword by the bed. The bed curtains slowly fell, covering the girl's shadow. Then he silently turned around and walked out in the light of dawn. Slash. Chapter 2840. Lu Xinglan went out of the door and whistled. A black horse galloped over. He got on the horse and was about to gallop off. However, he saw a servant taking care of the carriage, as if someone was about to leave. A carriage of this size was required to leave the residence. There were only Mother Lu and Wei Wei Bai. Lu Xinglan looked at the carriage indifferently for a while before pulling the reins. The horse immediately started galloping. Meanwhile, Wei Wei Bai was sleeping soundly. The system finally came back after being blocked for an entire night and saw the male lead running away. He immediately turned on the super alarm. I've waited for 1,000 years. I've waited for 1,000 years. I have no regrets. The decibel exceeded that of a plane taking off in 1,000 years. Wei Wei Bai immediately jumped up. She covered herself with a blanket and looked confused. What's wrong? Who's watching a snake's marriage scam drama so early in the morning? A snake's marriage scam. Such a touching love story between a human and a beast. How could it be a scam? The system silently turned off the alarm. You said that you wanted to go to the border with the male lead to increase his favorability. In the end, the male lead ran away. To go with the male lead, Wei Wei Bai prepared 2 days of pots and pans, quilts, pillows, incense burners, various skincare products, and the like. The food could fill half the carriage. The carriage was already prepared and ready to leave at any time. Wei Wei Bai pulled her clothes and put them on under the blanket while yawning. Lu Xinglan, that beast is not human. Even a beast's waist is not as good as his waist. Did he eat a tiger's penis, bastard? After a night of torment, even Beast did not have his drive. She put on her dress, carried a small bag, put on her shoes, and ran out. When she saw her carriage, she hurriedly went up. She had no choice but to go to the border. Lu Xinglan had no intention of rebelling. If she was not by his side, he would go to war for 3 to 5 years. If he did not come back, she would be disfigured first. She had thought about it. Anyway, when she was at the border, she would think of ways to frame Yuan Xian for treason or something. As time passed, he didn't believe that Lu Xinglan wouldn't rebel for the sake of the southern nation. She finally understood. If Lu Xinglan wanted to rebel, she wouldn't be able to take the romantic route. Because the more favorable his impression of her, the more he wanted to live in seclusion and farm in the countryside. On the contrary, when the royal family was courting death, his visit index would increase. However, the increase was limited. It was probably because that brat Yuan Xian had not really provoked him. Wei Wei Bai had already thought of a series of ways to sell out the information and how to make Lu Xinglan suffer heavy losses. It would be best if she could walk the line between life and death. This way, Lu Xinglan could see everything clearly. That bastard Yuan Xian really wanted him dead. He would not give him any chance to live in seclusion. Then, for the sake of her own life, Lu Xinglan would have no choice but to rebel. Wei Wei Bai was thinking of all kinds of plans. Once in a while, he would chat with the system to help sort out his thoughts. After the system finished listening, it said, "Why are you no different from those evil demonesses?" She was simply an evil female supporting character, constantly thinking of inciting others to rebel. He couldn't wait for the Southern Empire to be in deep trouble. Wei Wei Bai said, "Say that again." The system said, "Evil demoness." Wei Wei Bai said the last 4 words. The system said, "Evil demoness." Wei Wei Bai immediately held her face in satisfaction. "Thank you for the compliment." It was an evil demoness, and all 9 of them were the number 1 beauties. The remaining one was a fairy. She liked this beautiful description. The system was speechless. The carriage left the city and headed north. However, it didn't take more than 2 steps. The carriage stopped. Chapter 2841. Wei Wei Bai lifted the curtain of the carriage and didn't wait to ask the coachman what was going on. She saw a handsome man sitting on a black horse in front of her. He seemed to have waited for a while. His long hair was tied up in a high ponytail and fell behind him. He was wearing a black robe with narrow sleeves, which set off his slender figure even more nimble. Wei Wei Bai looked at him silently. Lu Xinglan also looked up and stared at the girl sitting in the carriage. She held the curtain with her fingers, and her delicate face was calm and gentle. Finally, she said in a calm voice, "Young master, I'll go with you." This sentence was clearly soft, but for some reason, it gave people a special feeling of strength. Lu Xinglan's eyes were deep, and he sat on the horse without moving. Finally, he sighed. It's very cold at the border. Your body is weak, and your hands and feet are cold in a warm place like the capital. You'll feel even worse there. The girl sitting in the carriage was stunned, as if she didn't expect him to say this. But she immediately reacted and curved her beautiful eyes. She said with a smile, "Then will young master help me warm my feet?" These words were said too calmly. Instead, there was no ambiguous feeling. It was more of a coquettish act. Lu Xinglan pursed his lips and said, "There are no flowers there." She had always liked these flowers, but there weren't any at the border. Wei Wei Bai casually used her fingers to comb the strands of hair that had fallen by her ear. Then she smiled sweetly. "If there are no flowers, I think you'll be fine." The man was as handsome as jade, and his face was unparalleled. He was much better looking than the flowers in the capital. Lu Xinglan reacted quickly and immediately understood what she meant. He was speechless for a moment, and a few traces of red crept up his fair cheeks. He lowered his head a little awkwardly. "You'll suffer if you go." Wei Wei Bai smiled. "It's not difficult to follow you." Lu Xinglan looked at her silently for a while. Suddenly, he got off the horse and picked a gorgeous wildflower from the roadside. He jumped onto the carriage. His movements were light, so as not to disturb the horse. On the contrary, Wei Wei Bai was shocked by his nimble and fast movements. She instinctively wanted to retreat. "I'm not leaving, Lu Xinglan. I want to follow you." Lu Xinglan, on the other hand, calmly placed the wildflower in her hair. Her pale and clean face was soft, and there was a trace of blood in it due to the beauty of the wildflowers. He smirked. "Are you going to suffer with me?" Wei Wei Bai said. "I'm not afraid." Lu Xinglan was silent for a moment before saying, "I'm scared." He was afraid that her body wouldn't be able to take it. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Xinglan snatched the coachman's whip, turned the carriage around, and whipped the horse. Under Wei Wei Bai's astonished gaze, he jumped off the carriage. "Send Madame back to the capital and forbid her from following us." His words were in order. She wanted to follow him, but he wouldn't let her. If she wanted to suffer, he wouldn't let her. She should be the one he doted on and loved. He refused to let her suffer even a little bit. The coachman was a trusted soldier of the Lu family, so he obeyed Lu Xinglan's orders. He immediately ran in the direction of the capital. Lu Xinglan stood in the same spot as the black horse walked over and stood beside him. Wei Wei Bai's shocked and anxious voice sounded. "Lu Xinglan, I want to follow you." Lu Xinglan's heart softened, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He stood there in a daze. After a long silence, he looked up and smiled helplessly. "Looks like I have to speed up." This was the first time he wanted to abandon a safe plan and change to the most intense and fastest way. To end this hopeless battle, just because she's still waiting for me to go back. / Chapter 2842. Lu Xinglan said softly. Then he got on the horse, and with a fierce look in his eyes, he pulled the reins and galloped away. He had to end it quickly. He had to come back quickly. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 94. Wei Wei Bai was sent back to the capital and was stuffed into the Lu mansion, unable to leave. When she went out, she was followed by a line of soldiers. Those who didn't know would think that they were escorting prisoners. Favorability, 94. Rebellion index, 0. Wei Wei Bai said that she couldn't be cured. She couldn't be a demoness who brought disaster to the country. She was going to be disfigured. Soon, a month had passed. There was only 1.5 months left before the side mission. She would be unrecognizable. It wasn't easy to not fail now. The communication system in ancient times was so bad. Lu Xinglan disappeared after going to the border. She couldn't even send him a message, let alone a strategy. The system was curious. What message did you send to make him rebel? Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. I went to mess with Yuan Xian. I made him a cuckold. He'll rebel when he's angry and kill us. System, the host is going all out for the side mission. Wei Wei Bai sighed. It's a pity he can't even do it. He's afraid that I'll run away. The Lu mansion is like an impenetrable fortress. Because she was so sad, Wei Wei Bai decided to go shopping to relieve her mood. She bought a bunch of flowers and was about to go home. The carriage didn't stop for a long time. Wei Wei Bai asked, "What's wrong?" The carriage took a lot of detours. Did the driver get lost? System, no, he just wants to give you a gift. Wei Wei Bai, question mark. System cuckold. The carriage stopped and the driver disappeared. Bai Weiwei lifted the curtain to take a look. She saw pavilions, terraces and pavilions, red walls, blue tiles and flowers. The palace, the young man standing below the carriage, wearing a yellow robe, had a delicate face, and because his eyes were bright and happy, it washed away the darkness around him. He seemed to be at a loss of what to do. When he saw the young girl looking at him in confusion, he wanted to explain, but his mouth was a little clumsy. "Jean, no, I saw that you were in a bad mood, so I wanted to have someone bring you here to relax." This reason was too perfunctory. He went to the imperial palace to relax. Wouldn't it be even more depressing? Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and didn't say anything. There was a trace of coldness in her charming eyes. Although it was cold, but it was still beautiful. Yuan Xian took a few steps forward and looked at her quietly for a long time before reaching out his hand. "Wei Wei, do you like it here?" Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything, but something was wrong in her eyes. She finally reacted and wanted to return to the carriage. But in the next moment, he saw Yuan Xian get into the carriage. Wei Wei Bai immediately shouted in a low voice, "What are you doing?" "I am a married woman, Your Majesty." These words were cold and heavy. Yuan Xian hadn't even taken half a step into the carriage when his figure stopped. He lowered his eyes, and the joy in his eyes was replaced by indifference. Then he snorted softly. "She won't be very soon." He paused and thought for a moment before saying, "You should say that you are a widow of the Liu family." Wei Wei Bai's face paled. "Please don't say that, Your Majesty." Yuan Xian's black eyes surged with a twisted heat. He smiled. "Liu Xinglan is dead. He was ambushed by the Northern Kingdom's army and fell off a cliff. The Northern Kingdom is holding a celebration party. Although they didn't see the corpse, no one could be sure whether he was dead or not. The suspicious Yuan Xian had already sent out the best assassins to find the corpse, or the living Liu Xinglan. Then they would kill him again." Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and looked at him coldly, disbelief written all over her face. Yuan Xian sneered. The malicious youth reached out and grabbed her slender wrist, wanting to pull her into his arms. "You have to believe it, even if you don't want to. Liu Xinglan is dead," so he met her cold eyes. He said fiercely and heavily, "You're mine now." Slash the save button at the bottom to record your reading record. Chapter 2843. It had always been a cold emperor's bedroom. It suddenly became lively. A group of palace maids was sent. The young emperor, who had always hated flowers, suddenly asked people to collect all kinds of rare flowers and plants. When he was in the Liu mansion, the young man had specially inquired about it. She liked to make her own rouge and powder. They were all made of flowers. She didn't even like those artificial jewelry, but she liked to casually pin flowers in her hair. He often thought of the scene when they met in the lotus field. The girl's jade-like face was full of smiles. Later, when he met her several times, he could see that she more or less had flowers in her hair. If it was someone else, the flowers would be overshadowed by the conspicuous flowers. Only on her body, the petals that were fleeting were merely embellishments to her stunning beauty. The young emperor was so careful, checking everything. He was afraid that it wasn't good enough, and he wouldn't get a good response. A row of palace maids came over with jewelry, clothes, rouge, flowers, and all kinds of beautiful accessories. They came to a closed door. The head palace maid carefully opened the lock without making a sound. It was as if she was afraid of alarming the people in the palace. The palace was where Yuan Xian lived. It was unusually spacious, and the white gauze curtain that had just been hung was fluttering lightly. It isolated the prying eyes of the people outside. The head palace maid didn't dare to look up and put down the things. Then she said respectfully, "Miss, do you want to change clothes?" There was no response. The head palace maid was secretly nervous and looked up carefully. But she saw that there were flowers on the table beside the screen. Her plain-colored fingers landed lightly on the flowers. The young girl's face was calm. She supported her cheek with one hand. Her eyes were emotionless as she looked at the flowers on the table. The head palace maid whispered again, "Miss, please change clothes." Wei Wei Bai was too lazy to look at her. After all, she was watching the Gord brothers fight the snake spirit that the system played for her. It was said that the Gord brothers were finished. She could see what Su Xian, the White Lady, and Fa Hai had to say. Wei Wei Bai said, "Yes, it looks good." The head palace maid was full of cold sweat, but when she thought of the emperor's orders, she didn't dare to disobey. She stepped forward and reached out to grab Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai finally glanced at her lazily and did not stop her. He was locked up for 3 days. Actually, she was also rotten. He was also hungry. It was time for him to accept his fate. The head palace maid's fingers had just landed on the back of her hand. Suddenly, he heard a cold sneer behind him. "Who allowed you to touch her?" The chief palace maid's face turned pale, and her legs immediately went soft. She knelt down and begged for mercy. "Your Majesty, this servant knows her mistake." Yuan Xian walked in from outside. He was a young man in a black robe. His face was still an unhealthy white. His eyes were incomparably gloomy, as if everyone owed him 8 million. "Men, drag him away and flog him." There was no mention of a number of beatings, meaning that he would be beaten to death. Wei Wei Bai finally pulled her emotions back from the love story of the 7 brothers of the Calabash brothers. She sighed faintly, and the flower on her fingertips fell onto the table. "Don't kill her. She didn't disrespect me." A trace of pleasant surprise appeared on Yuan Xian's gloomy face, but he restrained himself. Instead, he said gloomily, "She didn't do anything good. Leaving her alive is just a waste." Wei Wei Bai sat with her eyes lowered. She slightly turned her face, and her eyes were cold. There was no trace of seduction in her charming eyes, only cold indifference. Yuan Xian's thoughts were seen through by her. Chapter 2844. He lowered his head in embarrassment and clenched his fingers. Finally, the girl said softly, "I'll bathe and change my clothes. I'll eat properly. There's no need to shout at others." Yuan Xian's expression changed, but he was still stubborn. "I punish them because they didn't do well. I'm not usually so cruel." The palace maids and eunuchs kneeling on the ground. Wei Wei Bai looked away casually and continued to look at the flowers on the table. There was a hint of sadness on her beautiful face. Then, she seemed to be testing him. "Do you have any news?" She seemed to be so desperate that she didn't know who to ask. She could only ask the executioner. Yuan Xian's eyes were filled with viciousness, but when he saw her hanging her head, a trace of mist appeared in her clear eyes. She was as fragile as a broken flower, so beautiful that it could disappear at any time. His heart trembled, and he suddenly told the truth. "Who knows what happened to Lu Xinglan? I can't find him. He suddenly disappeared." Bagua was also affected by the contract. He didn't move again. Whether Lu Xinglan was dead or not became a common worry for Yuan Xian and Bagua. Wei Wei Bai was silent. The slender girl sitting quietly was so dreamy that she didn't look like a real person. Yuan Xian stared at her blankly for a while and couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. However, he saw her take out a handkerchief and gently cover her eyes. The tears that she couldn't cover in time fell from the corners of her eyes to her pink cheeks. She cried silently. It was so sad that it moved people. Yuan Xian's heart ached, but he was crazily jealous. She was crying for Lu Xinglan. "Don't kill him. He's a hero." Wei Wei Bai's voice was choked with sobs. She endured and said this sentence as if she was crying blood. Yuan Xian stopped in his tracks and opened his mouth, but he didn't get angry again. These words were too heavy. They were too admiring. She liked how a person looked. Even when they were sad, they were dazzling. Yuan Xian gritted his teeth, thinking that he must find Lu Xinglan and then kill him. Wei Wei Bai suddenly looked up. The handkerchief in her hand was soaked with tears. Her cheeks were flushed, and her long eyelashes were wet. She spoke softly, almost pleadingly. "I was willing to pay any price for his safety." Only then did Yuan Xian see the unwavering suspicion in her eyes. She didn't believe that he didn't know where Lu Xinglan was. She thought that he still wanted to kill Lu Xinglan, so she lowered herself to beg. He locked her up for 3 days, but she refused to say a single word, refused to eat a single mouthful of rice, refused to pay any attention to him. Today, to get information about Lu Xinglan, he had to do it, to beg him not to harm Lu Xinglan. She was actually speaking so humbly. Yuan Xian's thin lips were tightly pursed, and the malice in his eyes was exceptionally thick. He really wanted to fling his sleeves and yell at her for not giving up on Lu Xinglan. Wouldn't it be better to be his concubine? He was the true master of this country, and Lu Xinglan was just a watchdog. Now that the dog was worthless, he had no choice but to kill it. Who dared to say anything? Even if Lu Xinglan died and his country was temporarily unstable, he felt that he had the ability to protect it. He didn't believe that Lu Xinglan wasn't there. Could those wolf cubs of the Northern Kingdom really swallow up the entire Southern Kingdom? As long as they didn't swallow it all, he still had the ability to make a comeback. He had lived in Lu Xinglan's shadow since he was young. Now, even the girl he liked belonged to Lu Xinglan. The pride of an emperor made him clench his fists tightly, and the killing intent in his eyes boiled. He opened his mouth a few times. However, he saw that the girl seemed to be a little tired with her eyes half closed. She hadn't had a good rest during this period of time, and the shadow under her eyes was exceptionally obvious. / fast comma. Chapter 2845. Her health wasn't good, and the main culprit for her poor health was that he gave the secret medicine to Mother Lu and poisoned her. She supported her face with her fingers. Half of her pink wrist peeked out from her sleeve. It was delicate and flawless. She was a delicate beauty. Her black hair was a little messy, and the flowers on the ground seemed to have bloomed under her feet. She was so beautiful that Yuan Xian was stunned for a moment. She pursed her lips. Her lips were a little dry. Her face was also unusually pale. She looked like she would collapse at any moment. Yuan Xian paused for a long time. There was a hint of struggle in his eyes. Suddenly, he took 2 steps forward. "Are you willing to do anything?" His voice was low and dangerous. Wei Bai's long eyelashes fluttered, and then she looked at him with cold and empty eyes. She didn't answer. Yuan Xian looked away first. "Okay, isn't it just Lu Xinglan? She's worth your life. I won't kill her, okay?" Even if he took back the assassin, there was still the pursuit of the North. This time, he cooperated with the North to take Lu Xinglan's life. Both sides had reached an agreement. For the people of the North, their country could only be safe without Lu Xinglan. For Yuan Xian, he could only grow and become a real emperor without Lu Xinglan. He could even get the girl he liked. Wei Bai's cold eyes were replaced by a kind of joy. She revealed a smile. Her cold and frail appearance had a hint of smoke and fire, and the corners of her charming eyes curved slightly. Seductive. Yuan Xian was stunned. He suddenly felt that a promise not to kill Lu Xinglan in exchange for a smile was worth it. A crazy thought even appeared. Didn't Yuanda like Lu Xinglan? He liked her so much that he built a huge and gorgeous cage under his residence. He was waiting to catch Lu Xinglan and imprison her. He had never liked that crazy sister of his, but he felt that he could understand her desperate and terrifying thoughts. Just like him now, he wanted Lu Xinglan alive and through her to Yuanda to watch over. Then, he could use Lu Xinglan's life to threaten her to smile at him. Yuan Xian's inferiority complex and twisted madness slowly overflowed. He couldn't. She would not like a eunuch. If there wasn't anything that could threaten her, how could she be willing to stay? Yuan Xian pursed his lips and walked up to Wei Bai. He reached out and stroked her hair. Wei Bai seemed to want to dodge. Yuan Xian said coldly, "I won't kill Lu Xinglan." She was stunned and did not move. She sat there obediently and allowed him to stroke her hair. Yuan Xian immediately revealed a good-looking smile. It was so useful. Lu Xinglan still had this kind of value. When they caught him, they would think of a way to secretly transport him back to Nangong and break his limbs. Be his tool of threat. Wei Wei Bai's hair was stroked by someone. She said to the system calmly, "That's all you've got." Yuan Xian admitted that he was a brutal little lion cub. In Wei Wei Bai's eyes, she was simply a silly little husky. The system said, "Don't tease him, don't tease him, don't tease him." The little emperor couldn't resist the host's tricks at all. The host hasn't gone overboard yet. The little emperor couldn't take it anymore. Wei Wei Bai said, "What did I do? Did I expose my thighs or my arms? Or did I seduce him?" "You didn't have to do anything." Yuan Xian, the little brat, got carried away by himself. Can you blame him for not seeing a beauty? Blame yourself for being too beautiful. You haven't done anything yet, and he couldn't resist being seduced. The system indicated that the host was still in a narcissistic state today. Slash. Chapter 2846. Wei Wei Bai. And it's not a show for the little rabbit, but for the bastard. Lu Xinglan had planted a bunch of spies around Yuan Xian. She didn't show anything. Lu Xinglan could see it. After all, if she wanted to take a side mission, she had to do it miserably. Otherwise, how could he let Lu Xinglan see his woman under another man's body? That tragic feeling? Once she was in trouble, he had to come and save her. She rebelled while he was saving her. Wei Wei Bai smiled calmly and then sighed. I finally have a reason to take a bath. She pretended to be loyal and aggrieved. Was it easy to not eat, drink, rest, or wash up? If the bastard didn't rebel, she would take a pair of scissors and cut him off before she failed her mission. It wasn't a man's toy. It was cold at the border. It was already the end of summer in the capital. It was when it started to snow at the border. Xin Wu grabbed the wooden tube on the pigeon and opened it to take out a message. He walked into a dilapidated thatched house. Lu Xinglan was lying quietly on the bed. His chest was wrapped in a thick bandage, and blood was still seeping out from the bandage. His bloodless face was unusually pale, and his eyelashes were drooping, creating a fragile shadow under his eyes. Xin Wu came in expressionlessly, but hesitated whether he should hand out the message. Suddenly, the man on the bed's eyelashes trembled, and then Xin Wu saw him open his dark and deep eyes. His voice was hoarse. "Give it to me." Xin Wu handed the note to him. Lu Xinglan reached out and took it. The note was very thin and made of a special material. It could write a lot of messages. The last item on the note. It was Wei Wei Bai's message. She was captured and sent to the palace. He first learned of this news not long after he was shot, because his life was at stake. Xin Wu told him the news coldly. If he died, then Wei Wei Bai would belong to someone else forever. This news stimulated him. Lu Xinglan touched the note with his fingertips and hesitated for a while before reading it slowly. There was a long silence. Lu Xinglan struggled to close her palm and crush the note into powder. He pursed his thin lips, and his thin face gave off an incomparably sharp and handsome aura. An extremely thick sense of coldness appeared in his pair of deep black eyes. He looked up, his face deathly pale and mournful. She said he was a hero. That was why she had to use everything she had to exchange for his safety. She had been tormented by not eating or drinking for 3 days in the palace. She was almost ready to die, but because she wanted to save him, even if it was just an illusory promise, she was willing to give up everything in exchange. Lu Xinglan coughed lightly. He coughed up a mouthful of blood. Xin Wu immediately came over and smoothed his back, wiping away the bloodstains. Lu Xinglan didn't move. Instead, she lowered her eyes and sneered. She gritted her teeth and said with hatred, "Yuan Xian." He had never hated the royal family. No matter how preposterous it was or how much of an eyesore it was, he still felt that it was his duty to protect the Southern Empire. He couldn't stand the actions of the imperial family, so he interfered. He didn't really hate her either, but this was the first time a violent rage had surged in his heart. This hatred was surging and couldn't be stopped. It destroyed the last trace of loyalty he had to the royal family. Lu Xinglan lowered his head. His eyes were cold and deep. After a long silence, he finally said softly, "She said I was a hero." Xin Wu nodded. "She worships you." This wasn't a secret. The corners of Lu Xinglan's mouth twitched, but he couldn't smile. Finally, he said in a hoarse voice. I used to be the hero of the Southern Empire, but from now on, I will be her hero alone. At this point, Xianwu heard Lu Xinglan say calmly, it's the opposite. She could sacrifice everything to save him. Wasn't he the same? He could betray everyone for her. He was no longer willing to protect everyone. He only wanted to be her hero. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 96. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. You can see it when you open the bookshelf next time, if you like. Chapter 2847. Yuan Xian looked at the pile of rouge in distress. He specially asked an old master to make this. They were all packed in beautiful porcelain boxes. He felt that the boxes were too ordinary and even asked someone to pack them in a gold box. When he opened it, he saw countless boxes of rouge. She liked rouge, so he asked someone to make it. He didn't want her to make it herself and tire her hands. The killers on Lu Xinglan's side all returned, but they couldn't find Lu Xinglan. Perhaps Lu Xinglan was really dead. Yuan Xian had a conflicted and complicated feeling in his heart. It was best that she was dead, but what would she do after she died? During this period of time, Yuan Xian finally saw it clearly. Wei Wei Bai liked Lu Xinglan. She liked her very, very much, so she couldn't eat anymore and started to get sick. She took medicine and spat it out. His heart ached when he saw it. Yuan Xian stared blankly at the table full of flowers and rouge, thinking about what else girls liked. He couldn't be bothered to look at those concubines. To know what girls liked, he even went to the harem. In the end, those concubines all used a bunch of tricks to make him stay. One was too out of line and found something wrong with him. He directly chased her to the cold palace. The eunuchs and palace maids would naturally deal with this kind of concubine who knew the secret. The imperial physician rushed over and reported every time, as usual. Yuan Xian heard and frowned. Can't you let her eat more? The imperial physician said, mental illness is difficult to treat. Yuan Xian nodded and then asked someone to remove the imperial physician from his position and chase him out of the palace. Useless imperial physician, scram. After the imperial physician, it was Yuanda's turn. She was dressed exceptionally gorgeously and smiled eccentrically. Imperial brother, congratulations on getting what you wanted. Yuan Xian looked at her coldly and didn't say anything. Yuanda sat down in the main hall and said in a sharp voice, you got what you wanted. Where's my Xinglan? Yuan Xian rolled his eyes and said coldly, she got into an accident and I can't find her. Yuanda roared loudly, I know you want to kill her. We agreed to split one. Why do you get one and I don't? Yuan Xian sneered. What? Lu Xinglan is missing and I can't find her. Yuanda staggered to his feet and cried, why don't you chase after him? What if the people of the Northern Kingdom find him and want his life? Yuan Xian looked at her silently, looking at her crazy and ugliness. Suddenly, he said, you're too. Yuanda retorted coldly, you're more pitiful than me. The brother and sister glared at each other coldly. The system and Bai Weiwei watched them stare at each other, bored. The system was munching on its snacks. The little emperor can't be cuckolded. That illness is very serious. It was no wonder that he would drug Lu Xinglan with such a misogynistic drug, because Lu's eyes. He had a deep understanding of this aspect. Bai Weiwei said weakly, hungry. Then it silently picked up the bird's nest and red date porridge. Come, Lulu. Yes, the woman had been snatched away. The visitor index was only 60. In other words, although that old tortoise Sun Tzu Lu would verbally say that he was rebelling, but in his heart, he did not care about the throne. In the end, Gao Bui succeeded in his rebellion, but he still left the throne to someone else. Wei Wei Bai was half lying on the bed, reading a book of pretentious ancient Chinese. She muttered, 60 is too low. How can I make him want to be the emperor? This was a difficult problem. It was not a problem for other men. Crossover system. Adonis, come here. /crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu, come download Transmigration system. Adonis, come here // to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click on to record this reading record. Transmigration system. Adonis, come here, that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.